Welcome to the Paranormal M channel. Can't sleep again? No worries, I've got you. I'll be sharing paranormal stories and experiences from all around the world with you. Drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. And thank you so much for sending in your paranormal experiences. If you've got more, don't hesitate to send them my way. Seriously, I love doing this. This is always the best part of my day. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications. All right, let's get into it. So, this all started about 6 years ago, right after I bought the house I'm living in now. At first, it was my sleep. I started getting these awful bouts of sleep paralysis, like the kind that makes you dread nighttime. I'd lie there, completely stuck, and I'd see things that felt way too real. Hands creeping up from the side of the bed like they were reaching for me. A shape just standing in the corner or at the foot of the bed. Sometimes I'd swear I saw spiders crawling across the ceiling. I still get sleep paralysis once in a while, but nothing like those first couple years. And during that time, little things around the house would happen, small enough that I could explain them away. Like, okay, I'm exhausted, or I'm stressed, or I must have forgotten. Stuff like that. But then, about 2 years ago, it started getting harder to shrug off. I have this big bookcase in the living room, one of my favorite things I own. I'm weirdly particular about it. Everything is in order, lined up perfectly, exactly how I want it. And I'd come home from work and find a couple books flipped upside down, like pages facing out instead of the spine. Not fallen, not slid out, just turned. Wrong on purpose, if that makes sense. Around the same time, my bedroom light started getting messed with. I have this specific setup. I flip the wall switch, the fan kicks on full power, but the light stays off. That's how I like it. And when I'd come home, it would be changed. Light on, fan wrong. Like someone had pulled the chain on the fixture. And that's the only way it can change. One time, my boyfriend Nate and I had a couple friends over, Jules and Marcus. We were hanging outside for a bit, just talking, and we left the front door unlocked because we were literally right there. When we tried to go back inside, the door was locked. Deadlocked. No one had gone in. Nobody had walked past us. If I hadn't grabbed my keys out of habit, we would have been stuck outside like idiots. And I still tried to be rational about it. I did. I really wanted it to be something normal. But lately, it's been escalating. A few weeks ago, Nate and I were in the living room late at night, watching TV. We had this lamp on, same lamp we always use, and it suddenly started flickering like crazy. Not a little bulbs dying flicker, like rapid, intense, almost aggressive flickering. We just stared at it, both of us quiet. And the weird part is, it's never done it before, and it hasn't done it since. Then there was this night when we were trying to sleep, and we both heard my son, Eli, talking right outside our bedroom door. Clear as day, like he was standing there, saying something to us. We opened the door immediately, and the hallway was empty. And Eli was in his bed, fully asleep. He's little. He's not sneaky, and he's definitely not the kind of kid who could pull some prank like that and then teleport back into bed. A few nights after that, I was in the shower, and I heard Nate talking to me. It was his voice, right there, like he was standing in the bathroom having a conversation. I couldn't make out the words because of the water, but I could hear him clearly enough to know it was him. So I pulled the curtain back to answer him. No one was there. And he wasn't even down the hall. He was in the living room. And then this week, it was about 2 a.m, I got up to use the bathroom. I closed the door because otherwise the cats barge in and act like they pay rent. I'm sitting there, about to get up and go back to bed, when I hear a whistle, right outside the bathroom door. Like someone standing there, just whistling once. Not the pipes, not the house settling. A whistle. And on top of all that, I keep waking up with random bruises, little scratches, not always in the same place, And I don't sleepwalk. I don't have sharp furniture around the bed, and it's not like I'm doing anything that would explain it. What really gets me is other people feel it too. People come over and say they feel watched, like the house feels occupied. Friends who used to stop by don't want to anymore. And my cats, this part makes my stomach drop. My cats will stare at empty corners of a room like they're tracking something. Then they'll suddenly bolt, like something rushed them. And I'm tired. I've spent years brushing it off, giving it the benefit of the doubt, blaming stress, blaming sleep, blaming anything I could blame. But it's happening more often now. And after the past week especially, I'm honestly spooked. I don't even know what I'm asking for anymore. Advice, I guess. Ideas. Something I can try that doesn't make me feel ridiculous. Because I'm at the point where ignoring it isn't working, and pretending it's nothing is starting to feel like I'm lying to myself. So, this happened when I was around 12, maybe 13, during one of those sticky, warm summer nights in Southern California, where it still feels like daytime, even when the sky is dark. Back then, my family lived in this apartment complex, and my friends and I had this routine in the summer. We'd sit on the outdoor stairs forever, talking about nothing and everything, just trying to stretch the night as long as we could. Our place was on the second floor, so the stairs kind of became our little hangout spot. One night, it was just me and my sister, Marisol. We were sitting there like usual, half bored, half comfortable, until she suddenly said she had to run inside to use the bathroom. No big deal, she'd be right back. Except, not even 5 minutes after she left, I noticed this glow, like a bright, clean light, peeking from between the buildings across from mine. At first, I honestly thought it was a security guard's flashlight, or maybe someone messing around with a strong LED or something. But then it slid out into view, like it wasn't attached to anyone, just a light. And I'm not talking about a little flicker or a reflection. This thing was a full-on ball of light, about the size of a basketball, maybe a little bigger, and it was bright. Not see-through, not like a bubble. More like a solid, glowing orb with this weird energy to it. Like the edges couldn't decide what shape they wanted to be. The glow shimmered and shifted, like it was alive in a quiet way. It started hovering toward me. I remember just freezing, like my brain couldn't pick a reaction. I wasn't screaming, I wasn't running. I was just stuck there, staring, feeling my heart thumping like it was trying to warn me. Hey, this is real. This is happening. When it got close, it didn't stop right in front of me like in a movie. It drifted slightly to the side, almost like it was circling, and then floated behind me. I felt my whole body go tense, because you know that feeling when you can't see what's behind you, but you know something is there. Then it rose, slowly, quietly. It hovered up the stairs toward my front door and kind of wandered around up there, like it was looking for something, or like it already knew exactly where it wanted to be. I finally snapped into that panicked, desperate mindset where you just want another human being to show up so you're not alone with whatever this is. I remember turning my head, scanning the walkway, the parking lot, the corners between buildings, hoping someone would appear. A neighbor, a friend, anybody. But it was like the whole complex decided to go silent at the exact wrong moment. So I yelled for my parents, loud, like, "Mom, Dad!" the way you do when you really need someone. But either they couldn't hear me, or they assumed I was being dramatic because nothing. No one came. No one answered. And there I was, alone, just staring at this glowing orb like I'd been dropped into someone else's reality. After a minute or two, though it felt longer, it floated back down the stairs again, passed near me, and then drifted away toward the back area between the buildings across from mine. Smooth and steady, like it had done this before, like it had places to be. And even now, Years later, that's the part that messes with me. Because sometimes I'll lie awake and wonder, was I being watched? Did it somehow know my sister was going to leave and I'd be alone? Was it coincidence that no one walked by, not even once? And what if I had followed it? What would I have found behind that building? Maybe I'm overthinking it. Maybe it was some bizarre natural thing or some explanation I'll never learn. But it didn't feel like nothing. It felt intentional. And that's what I can't shake. And I swear, every so often, I still catch myself thinking, has anyone else ever seen something like that? Like a glowing ball of light that moves like it has a purpose. Because if you have, I would honestly love to know I'm not the only one. So, let me set the scene for you. We live out in southeast Michigan, kind of that in-between place where it's not quite countryside, not quite suburb. We've owned our house for a long time now, over 2 decades, and I've always felt like we've kept it good. Physically cared for, sure, but also held in a certain way. Like you can feel when a place has been lived in with respect. My partner, Mara, and I have raised our kids here. They're grown now. Our daughters especially are in that adult but still close phase. And our family's been involved for years in Red Road-style practices. Sweat lodge, ceremony in the summer, prayer, that kind of life. We used to have a sweat lodge out back, but it's inactive right now. It needs rebuilding. We took it down the right way when it was time, and the space has been resting, but still, there's history there. Our lot's about an acre, with a lot of old trees, big ones, the kind that make the yard feel like its own world at night. And I've always loved that. I've walked that yard in the dark for years, barefoot sometimes in summer. Never had that something's wrong feeling. It's always felt like home. But here's where it gets strange. Over the last year or so, Mara and our daughters, Nina and Elsie, started telling me about this thing they'd hear at night when they were sitting on the back steps. Not footsteps, not a raccoon. They described it the same way every time. This sudden shift in the air, like your senses sharpen without your permission. And then a sound behind them, like a big animal breathing, wet, heavy, followed by this low, rough growl. And then, pause, running, fast, coming toward them. They'd whirl around or bolt inside, and there'd be nothing there. I didn't know what to do with that. I believed them, but I hadn't experienced it myself, so my mind kept trying to file it under night sounds or your nerves messing with you. You know how we do. And then, a few weeks ago, it happened to me. It was around 11 at night. I was standing in the backyard near the house, just enjoying that quiet. Crickets going, fireflies blinking in the tall grass, stars out. That kind of stillness where you feel like you're part of the land instead of just living on it. And all of a sudden, right behind me, close, like 20 feet, maybe less, I heard it. That slobbery, breathy animal sound. A growl, but not like an angry dog barking. More like something big deciding it's there. My whole body lit up. Pure fight or flight. No thinking, just electricity. And then I heard the running. Paws tearing through grass, closing distance. I spun around, and I didn't even plan what came out of my mouth. I just roared at the dark, like something in me snapped on. I shouted, "Hey!" And then, loud, shaking, half rage, half fear, "This is my house!" And when I turned, nothing. Nothing in the yard, nothing near the trees, nothing moving. Just the fireflies in the night like it hadn't done anything at all. Now, I want to be careful how I say this. It didn't feel like some movie version evil. It wasn't dripping with menace like that. But it did feel intrusive. Like something big had stepped into my space without permission. Like a presence that didn't belong and didn't care that it didn't belong. And I'll tell you something else that made me second-guess myself. Our neighbors have two big, nasty dogs behind a chain-link fence on the other side of the yard. Loud, aggressive dogs. And part of my mind tried to go, okay, maybe sound is bending weird. Maybe it's echoing. Maybe it's carrying through the fence line. Then, just a few nights ago, another thing happened. This time out front. Our daughter Nina was on the porch around 4 a.m. She works late shifts, so for her, that's basically evening. She heard rustling in the front yard. Figured it was a possum or something. Normal stuff. And then she said she saw movement. Fast. Not like an animal weaving through bushes. More like a blur that jumped distance. Like something went from one spot to another in a way that didn't match the space between. She said it moved up to her left, maybe 50 feet away, just gone and then there. And right as she's trying to process that, our motion-sensing garage light flicks on. She looks, can't see anything, and then she felt more than saw, something shifting toward her. She didn't stand there trying to be brave. She did exactly what you'd want your kid to do. She sprang inside and slammed the door like her life depended on it. And when she looked again, nothing on the porch. Nothing obvious in the yard. Just that light, on, shining over emptiness. So after that, Mara and I said, all right, no more pretending it's nothing. A few nights ago, we smudged the perimeter, walked the whole yard with sage, and steady, with intention. Not frantic, not scared, more like reaffirming. Like drawing a line with prayer and saying, this place is held. This place is cared for. This place is not available. Because I believe something pretty strongly. Attention feeds things. Fear feeds things. If something wants a reaction, giving it panic is like tossing it food. And I've been trying not to do that. At the same time, I'll be honest with you. I'm not walking around trembling. I'm more irritated, offended, like someone stomping around in my living room with muddy shoes. It feels like theft, stealing peace, stealing ease, and that's what gnaws at me. Not terror, the disrespect. This property has been good to us. I've got a relationship with these old trees, especially the black walnut in the back corner. I talk to it. I've leaned my forehead into its bark more times than I can count. It's given us sap I've boiled down. It held a swing when our kids were little. It shades the yard like it's doing us a favor. Even the ground feels generous here. Mycelium that pops up golden oyster mushrooms after rain, and once in a while morels like little gifts. Plants come and go, and the ones that stay feel like they belong. It's been a balanced place, and we've had years of ceremony and laughter and prayer in that lodge area. Friends gathered, good medicine, and then this. What really got me too was hearing from two of our older kids, both in their 30s now, that they experienced something similar years ago. They just didn't tell us at the time. Didn't want to freak anyone out, I guess. Which means this might not be new at all. It might just be that now it's pushing harder, or we're noticing more. We're planning to sit down with close friends of ours, Tommy and Ray, who've walked this path a long time too. We want to talk it through with people who understand the ceremonial side of things. Part of me wonders if the lodge space being idle matters. Not because we did anything wrong. We've always been careful and respectful, but because an old ceremonial space has a kind of gravity, you know? And when it's quiet for a while, maybe something decides to nose around. I don't know. I just know this. We've lived here a long time. We've treated this land like a relative, not a possession. And whatever this is, sound, presence, animal, something we can't name, it doesn't get to claim the yard with fear, because this is our home. And I'm not interested in sharing it with something that runs at you in the dark and then hides when you turn around. So I used to work as an inspection clerk for a real estate agency in this medium-sized mining town. Nothing huge, but busy enough that I was in and out of houses constantly. And I'm telling you, when you see as many homes as I did, you start to notice something people don't talk about much. A lot of houses feel creepy. Not haunted creepy necessarily, just off. Especially the older ones. And when you're doing a full inspection, you can be inside for hours, sometimes right up until the light starts fading and the shadows get long. My job was simple on paper. Take photos and notes for every category you can imagine. Walls, ceilings, floors, windows, cupboards, fixtures, everything. If there's damage, if there's wear, if there's anything unusual, it goes in the report. And yeah, houses make noises, clicks, taps, a little settling, pipes shifting, roof expanding when it heats up, then contracting when it cools. I'm used to all that. I'm the kind of person who explains things away automatically. But one afternoon, one of the agents, her name was Marissa, comes up to me and says, "Can you do this one for me?" I laughed a little, like, "What's the problem?" And she didn't laugh back. She just said, "I can't. I don't want to go in there again." That alone was enough to make me take it seriously. The place was an older rental on the edge of town. Weathered fence, dusty yard, one of those houses that looks tired even in the daytime. The moment I stepped through the front door, my whole body reacted. Not like fear exactly, more like this deep animal urge that said, "Get out. Something's wrong." I'm usually alert on inspections anyway, mostly because I'm always aware someone could come in behind me. So I locked the gate, locked the main door, and kept my keys in my pocket. Normal routine. I told myself to shake it off. Just a weird vibe. I started working through the front areas. Entryway, dining space, then the living room. In the living room, there was this old door that opened to the front yard, and the curtains and window fixtures were this dated style, heavy, older hardware. It made me think the house had been standing there a long time. And while I'm photographing the skirting boards, I hear it. A soft shuffle from the hallway behind me. Not a sharp footstep, not a creak. A shuffle, like someone in slippers, half awake, dragging their feet on the way to make coffee. I froze, just listening. Nothing after that. So I did what you do when you're trying to stay professional. I pretended I didn't care, kept moving. Down the hallway, there was a mirror at the far end. 2 bedrooms on the right, and on the left, 2 bathrooms, side by side, like the house had been modified at some point. I went into the first bedroom on the right, and the smell hit me immediately. It was strong, sour, damp, like old fabric that had been wet for too long. My first thought was the carpet. The place was stained, dark patches, weird discoloration, and I remember thinking, that's going to need replacing. Later I found out the underlay had rotted in places. I'm crouched down, taking photos and typing notes on my phone when I hear a voice. Just a voice, out of nowhere. At first, I genuinely assumed it was Marissa calling out, checking if I was okay. So I stood up and walked back toward the front door, like, "Hello?" No one. The house was still locked. The yard gate was still latched. No footsteps. No movement. I went back into the room, telling myself I'd imagined it. Then, while I'm looking down at a stain near the corner of the bed frame, I hear it again. A sharp, angry "No!" I stopped so fast, I swear my heart slammed into my throat. I just stood there, staring at the stained carpet like it had spoken to me. I scanned the room, closet, corners, behind the door, under the bed, anything that could hide a person. Nothing. I forced myself to finish the photos and backed out into the hallway. Next was the main bedroom. Bigger, quieter, less smell. I did the usual. Windows, walls, ceiling, wardrobe doors. Nothing happened in there, and that almost made it worse, because it felt like the house was holding its breath. I stepped out into the hall, looking down at my phone while typing, and out of the corner of my eye, I saw movement in the mirror. A figure. It looked like a person standing at the end of the hallway, just a shape, upright, human-sized. I turned my head fully to the mirror and... gone. I looked straight down the hall. Empty. I actually made this involuntary sound, like a little gasp I couldn't hold in, and then I let out this weird, nervous chuckle, like I could laugh it off and make it less real. Okay, I muttered to myself. All right. I moved to the next room, one that opened into a kind of entertainment area at the back. As I stepped through, I heard the shuffle again. This time it was closer, and it felt deliberate. I stopped and listened, completely still. And then the first bedroom door behind me slammed shut. Not a gentle swing, not a breeze. A hard, sharp slam that echoed down the hallway. I panicked. Full panic. I went charging back through the house, checking every room, every bathroom, every space big enough for someone to crouch. I even checked the back door and the yard, thinking maybe someone had slipped in somehow. Nothing. My hands were shaking. Then from somewhere in the house, a woman's voice, loud and commanding, barked, "Move." And I mean, I heard it. There was no maybe left. I stood there in the hallway feeling my skin crawl, and all I could think was, I'm done. I'm done, I'm done, I'm done. I headed straight for the front door. I didn't care about the rest of the inspection. I just wanted daylight and air and distance. As I reached the entryway, the bedroom door behind me, one I'd reopened earlier, slammed shut again. That was it. That was my limit. I stepped out onto the front path like the house had spit me out. I stood there for a second with my palms on my thighs, breathing hard, trying to get my nerves under control. I remember looking around like someone might see me and ask what happened, and I'd have to explain it out loud and sound insane. I whispered a quick prayer, something messy and rushed, not even sure what I was asking for, and then I forced myself back inside, because the job still had to get done. After that, it eased up. No more slamming doors, just faint shuffling now and then, farther away as I moved through the back area. Like whatever it was had made its point. When I finally finished and went to leave for real, I unlocked the front door and heard one last word in that same voice as before. Now. I didn't even argue with it. I just said, out loud, like I was talking to an impatient stranger, Yeah, I'm going. And I got out of there as fast as my legs would carry me. What I do know is this. He vanished for months. Rent unpaid, no contact. Eventually, he was evicted. After the maintenance crew finished up, one of the guys, Dale, caught me outside the office and said, "Mate, that house is unsettling." He told me his team had their own stories. Lights flicking on when nobody was near the switches, strange noises, low moans in the hallway. The kind of stuff people say half joking, but their eyes don't match the joke. These days, I heard the mine's rented out for workers. And honestly, I haven't checked in to see how it's going. Part of me doesn't want to know. So, yesterday, Well, technically it was this past Saturday. Ethan and I decided to be a little impulsive. We had the whole day open. No plans, no obligations, and that kind of freedom always makes us feel like teenagers again. We tossed a couple of water bottles in the car, grabbed our dog, Maple, and headed north toward Ukiah just to hike, wander, and see where the road took us. And honestly, the day started out perfect. We drove through these gorgeous stretches of trees that felt like driving through a living cathedral. At one point, we even veered off toward the coast, took Highway 1 for a bit, just because it was there, and the ocean looked unreal. The whole time, Ethan was in his element, stopping here and there to take photos. He always does that, and usually he'll tell me, "Hey, I'm hopping out for a second." So I'm not just sitting there wondering where he went. Except there was this one weird moment earlier in the day. We pulled into this totally random rest stop, one of those places you can't even picture afterward because it's just asphalt, a bathroom, and some trees. I ran inside real quick, and Ethan took Maple for a short walk. When I came back out, Maple was there, but Ethan wasn't. I could see him off to the side, kind of absorbed in his camera like he'd drifted away without thinking about it, which was unusual. Not alarming exactly, just off. I remember thinking, that's new. And then I shrugged it away, because what else do you do with something like that? Anyway, we kept going. We hiked, met a couple of friendly strangers on the trail, laughed at how Maple acted like every single stick was a treasure. Later, we grabbed food, nothing fancy, just one of those quick roadside meals. And of course, we got coffee. Because we're those people. We ended up with iced drinks in hand and the kind of tired happiness you only get after a full day outside. And then we started driving home. Now, here's where things get hard to explain without sounding like I'm telling a campfire story. But I swear to you, I'm telling it exactly the way it felt. There's this stretch of road between a Redwood Park area and a campground. Ethan had been talking about it all week like it was his favorite part of the whole drive. He kept saying, "Just wait till you see it. It's unbelievable." So I was expecting something beautiful. But as it got later, the light started to indicate dangerously shifting into that dusk dark, and I got this sudden, heavy feeling in my body. Like, my stomach felt tight and bloated, and my heart started doing that quick, nervous flutter. No reason, no trigger, just this wave of "please don't stop here." I actually said it out loud. I was like, "Hey, can we not pull over? I don't want to stop for pictures right here." And to my surprise, Ethan immediately agreed. He didn't tease me or brush it off. He just said, "Yeah, I feel weird too." So I thought, okay, we're on the same page. We'll just drive through. But then we hit this bend in the road, one of those curves that tucks you under a canopy of enormous trees, where the branches kind of knit together overhead, and the car slowed. And then it stopped. Not like he pulled over into a turnout. It just came to a stop like his foot decided on its own. I looked over at him, expecting him to shake it off and keep going, but instead he unbuckled his seatbelt. I remember saying, "What are you doing?" And he turned toward me with this blank, confused expression and said, really softly, "I don't know." And then he opened the door. Maple, who usually loses her mind at the idea of new smells or a new place, climbed off Ethan's side and came over to me. Very slowly. She planted herself on my lap and just stared straight ahead. No whining, no sniffing, no pawing at the window. Just still, like she'd turned into a statue. And the air. This is the part that haunts me. It didn't smell like a forest. It smelled sterile, like an air-conditioned off-building. That clean, chilled, artificial freshness that doesn't belong between redwoods at dusk. And everything went quiet. Not normal quiet. Not, "Oh, it's peaceful out here" quiet. more like the world had muted itself. I tried to break the tension by whistling a tiny little tune, something absent-minded, just a few notes, and it felt like the sound didn't travel, like it got swallowed immediately. No echo, no bounce, nothing. I looked around and it was weirdly tidy. No fallen branches, no mess, no brush. The forest floor looked almost staged, and I noticed something else that made my skin prickle. There weren't any other cars. No headlights, no distant engine sounds. Nobody. Not even those emergency call boxes you sometimes see. It was just us, parked under this canopy, inside this pocket of wrongness. I glanced at the clock when we rolled under the trees. 7:41 p.m. I remember because I fixate on time when I'm anxious. Ethan, despite agreeing we wouldn't stop, started taking photos, still from inside the car, like he didn't even trust himself to step out. His movements were slow, almost dreamlike, and he didn't really answer me when I asked him to just drive. And then, like a needle scratching across a record, a black car passed us, then a lighter-colored one right behind it. And the second those cars went by, it was like the pressure popped. Ethan blinked, like he'd just woken up. He rolled the windows up fast, shut the door, started the car, and drove off without me even needing to say anything. And here's the part that makes my stomach drop every time I replay it. When we were fully out of that stretch, I looked at the clock again. It was 8:16 p.m., but it genuinely felt like we'd been stopped for maybe 5 minutes. A short, tense conversation, a few breaths, a few pictures. That's it. And as we pulled away, right as the trees started to thin, some bird, somewhere up in the dark, whistled back the exact little tune I'd done earlier. Same notes, same cadence, like a reply. Maple didn't move off my lap until we passed the campground area. Not even once. She stayed pressed into me, rigid and silent, like she was waiting for permission to relax again. Later, once we were somewhere normal, somewhere with streetlights and other cars and the feeling of reality, I tried to talk it through with Ethan. And he looked at me and said, "I don't remember any of it." He remembered entering that canopy, and he remembered driving out. But the middle? The stopping? The open door? The windows? The photos? The time jump? Nothing. So now I'm sitting here trying to tell myself there's a reasonable explanation. That we misread the clock. That we were more tired than we realized. That the light played tricks. That anxiety makes time feel strange. But I'll be honest with you. It didn't feel like anxiety. It felt like something else reached in and grabbed the moment. And I keep going back to that sterile smell, and Maple's stillness, and that bird repeating my tune like it had been listening the whole time. So, yeah, that's what happened. And if you've ever driven through that area, between the redwoods and those campgrounds, have you felt anything like that? Even just a weird gap in time, or a sudden wave of dread, or like the world got too quiet. You know how some houses feel like they're holding their breath after dark? Heel House, this old, rambling 14-bedroom place tucked into the countryside in Devon, had that kind of feeling. Beautiful in the daytime, heavy at night. And then, on certain nights, no pattern, no warning, she'd appear. The first time someone mentioned it, I brushed it off. Guests would whisper about a woman in pale, old-fashioned clothes. Late Edwardian, they said, moving through the corridors like she belonged there. Not rushing, not sneaking, just searching. Like the house was a file cabinet, and she was sure something important had been misplaced. Sometimes people swore they saw her seated at the piano. Other times, she'd drift along the upstairs hallway and slip right into bedrooms, as calm as someone checking on sleeping children. A few guests actually woke up and watched her leave their room, quietly, as if she hadn't meant to wake them at all. But the part that got under my skin? The owner, Graham Whitfield, that practical, level-headed type, told me he'd woken up more than once with her standing at the foot of his bed. He said it wasn't a nightmare feeling. Not exactly. It was the light. A faint, bluish glow, like moonlight filtered through water, and it was bright enough that his eyes snapped open before his brain even caught up. And almost always, almost like it arrived with her, there'd be music. Not loud, not like someone was down in the drawing room putting on a performance. More like piano notes carried through distance and walls. Soft, patient, unmistakably classical. A few times guests insisted it sounded like Chopin, the kind of melody that makes you feel lonely even when it's beautiful. Now Graham, he didn't panic. He got curious. He kept saying there had to be a rational explanation. Wiring, old pipes, some trick of exhaustion and suggestion. He even tried keeping notes, as if the haunting could be solved with enough data. But friends and family staying over? They were not treating it like a science project. They were terrified. You can laugh at ghost stories until you're the one lying in an unfamiliar bed, hearing a far-off piano, and watching a figure glide out of your room like she'd been standing there the whole time. What struck everyone, though, was the intent of it. She didn't feel angry, didn't feel violent. She felt focused, like she was looking for something she'd lost, and the house wouldn't let her rest until she found it. And then, this is the part that still makes me shake my head. It all shifted because of the most ordinary thing in the world, a stop at a dusty little secondhand place in town. Not a quaint antique shop, more like a cluttered, no-frills junk store with a hand-painted sign out front. Graham was poking around shelves of chipped china and old lamps when the shopkeeper came over and squinted at him like she was putting together a puzzle. "Sorry," she said. "Are you the one who lives at Heel House?" Graham blinked. Yes, I'm the owner." And the shopkeeper didn't hesitate. She just nodded like that answered everything. "I've got something that belongs there," she told him. "Something that needs to go back." She led him behind the counter and pulled out a framed painting wrapped in brown paper. The glass was shattered, like it had been dropped years ago and nobody bothered to repair it properly. And when Graham saw what was inside, he said his stomach turned cold. It was a portrait of a woman seated at a piano. Not just any woman, the woman. Graham bought it on the spot and carried it home like it was made of thin ice. After that, he did what anyone would do when reality starts behaving like a story. He dug into the history. Old records, local archives, the names tied to the estate. And eventually, the portrait gave him what the ghost never had, an identity. Her name, it turned out, was Eleanor Blythe. She'd lived in the house in the early 1900s, married into a family that had money, until it didn't. The story went that they'd fallen into debt, and in the final years, everything was sold off. Furniture, heirlooms, anything of value, including her portrait. And apparently it wasn't just any portrait. It was one of her prized possessions, painted during a trip abroad by a fashionable artist of the day, Rene Carver, if you believe the old notes Graham found tucked into the back of a ledger. So suddenly, all those night wanderings made a kind of heartbreaking sense. Imagine loving something, really loving it, and then watching it taken from you when your world collapses. Imagine the house staying behind, but that one beloved piece disappearing into strangers' hands, lost to time, lost to dust and bargain bins and broken glass. Graham didn't do anything dramatic. No seance, no priest, no shouting into the dark. He just hung the portrait in the drawing room, right where it belonged, facing the piano like it had been waiting there all along. And then, nothing. No blue glow at the foot of the bed. No quiet figure drifting across the landing. No soft, faraway Chopin. The house, honestly, felt lighter, like someone finally finished a sentence they'd been trying to say for a century. Later, Graham admitted they tried to reach out, just once or twice. Curiosity, I guess. A polite invitation, like, "Are you there? Are you at peace?" But there was no answer. And somehow that was the most comforting part. Because it didn't feel like she vanished in anger. It felt like she left because she was done. So when people ask if Heel House was haunted, I always think about it differently. It wasn't a story about a cursed object at all. It was a story about an object that ended a haunting. Like returning a lost thing to its rightful place was all she ever wanted. Hey, so this is kind of a heavy one, but I'll try to tell it the way it happened to me. Growing up, I carried this sadness around for as long as I can remember. I didn't have a reason for it. It was just there, like a shadow that followed me everywhere. I was way too young to be thinking this, but when I was in elementary school, I remember standing in the kitchen with a knife in my hand, pressed close enough to scare myself. I honestly thought about ending it. I didn't do it, not because I suddenly felt hopeful, but because I was terrified. And then time just kept moving. For years, nothing really changed. I'd go through the motions, but inside I felt empty. The one thing that made me feel anything good was gaming. It sounds small, but it was my escape. It was where my friends were, where I could actually breathe for a while. Then when I was 16, my parents decided we should move. Not just a new neighborhood either. Like, we moved out to this quiet place surrounded by trees and dirt roads. The kind of place where the nights are too quiet. The worst part was the internet. It was so bad I couldn't even play online anymore. I lost that one thing I depended on, and it felt like the floor dropped out from under me. That's when things got darker. I started hurting myself. I thought about suicide every single day. I also got rejected by someone I really liked. Let's call her Maya. And I know rejection isn't the end of the world, but in that moment, it felt like proof that nothing was ever going to get better. I was angry all the time too. I couldn't stand people. I felt like I was made out of nerves and bitterness and pain. And then, that night happened. The night that still doesn't make sense to me. I fell asleep like normal, and then I woke up. Except I wasn't where I was supposed to be. I was back in my old house, in my old bedroom, in my old bed. And the weird thing is, I knew it was a dream. I knew it, but it didn't feel like one. It felt solid, like I could feel the air, the weight of the blanket, everything. Only, something was different. There was a door in front of my room that wasn't supposed to be there. In real life, that spot would have led toward my brother's room, but this was a different door. It looked old and black, like it had been burned or stained by something. And behind it, I heard screaming. Not like someone fell screaming. Not like a scary movie. It was the kind of screaming that makes your stomach turn. The kind that feels wrong, like it shouldn't exist in the world at all. And the closer I looked at that door, the worse it felt. Like it was loaded with something. Pure negativity. Like standing near it made my skin crawl. Here's the part that messes with me the most. My body started moving on its own. I was trying to stop. I was telling myself, don't go over there. Don't touch it. But my feet kept walking, step by step, right toward that door. The screaming got louder, and then I started hearing whispers too, right by my ear. I couldn't make out the words, but I could feel them, like cold breath and pressure, and something trying to pull me in. I lifted my hand. My fingers were inches from the doorknob, and right before I touched it, someone grabbed my wrist. Hard. I got yanked backward, and I turned, and there was this man standing next to me like he'd been there the whole time. He had a calm face, a short beard, long hair, and these small round glasses, like the kind you'd see on an old professor. He was wearing a simple white tunic, like something out of a painting. In this really steady, gentle voice, he said, "Evan, we need to talk." That's it. That's the line. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't threatening. It was almost comforting. Like the way someone talks when they're trying to bring you back from the edge of something. And then, this bright flash, like someone set off a camera right in my face. Boom. I wake up. And the crazy part is, I don't remember the conversation. I don't remember what we talked about at all. It's just blank. Like my brain isn't allowed to keep it. But I remember how I felt when I woke up. It was like someone had unhooked a weight from my spine. Like a mountain had been lifted off my chest. All the stress, the fear, the anger, the constant darkness, it was just gone. Not smaller, not manageable, just gone. I laid there thinking, wait, is this what normal feels like? I felt calm. I felt safe. I felt weirdly grateful. I actually fell back asleep smiling, which is something I hadn't done in a long time. And ever since that night, I haven't gone back to the way I was before. It's been about 5 years now. I'm 21. I still can't explain who that man was, or why he was there, or what was behind that door, or what he said to me. But I know this. Something shifted. Something inside me turned around completely. Even my personality changed. I used to have anger issues. I used to hate being around people. Now I've got friends, real friends. I can actually enjoy life. I care about people. I'm social. It's like that dream didn't just make me feel better. It rewired something. So yeah, I don't know what to call it. I don't know if it was my brain saving itself, or something spiritual, or just a once-in-a-lifetime kind of dream. But whoever that mystery man was, the one with the round glasses, I still think about him sometimes. And honestly, if that was some kind of rescue, then it worked. So we moved into our place back in late 2020, right as everything was getting cold and quiet for the year. The house itself wasn't even old, built in the early 2010s, so it felt like a pretty safe bet. Nothing creaky, nothing historic, nothing that should come with a story attached. But of course, later on, we started hearing the story. Apparently, where our home sits now, there used to be 2 separate houses. An older guy, people in the neighborhood called him Gordon, I think, owned both. He lived in one, and his adult son Travis lived in the other. And from what we were told, the son's place had a reputation. Like everybody knew it was the kind of house people came and went from at weird hours. The kind of house you don't make eye contact with when you drive by. Eventually, the police raided it. After that, Gordon sold the whole stretch of land to a local builder. The old houses were torn down, and a few newer homes went up in their place, including ours. I'm not saying I know exactly what happened back then. I don't. But you hear raid, you hear drug house, and your brain fills in the blanks, you know? Anyway, when we first moved in, everything was honestly great. The house felt comfortable, normal. We were happy, settled. And then, I started noticing little things. It's hard to explain without sounding dramatic, but I'd catch what looked like a shadow out of the corner of my eye, like a silhouette shifting in a doorway or passing down a hall. And it wasn't constant or anything, just enough to make me pause and go, wait, was that something? It didn't freak me out. Not really. I figured I was tired, stressed, imagining things. So I mostly ignored it. Then a few months later, we had this couple over for dinner, our friends Maya and Chris. We're eating, talking, totally normal night. And at one point, Maya steps out onto the back patio. A minute later, she looks back in through the kitchen door and just freezes, like her whole face changed. She actually gasped, full-on, audible gasp. And she goes, I just saw someone standing there, right in the doorway. She described it as a dark figure, like a shadow man, just standing still. And the way she said it, she wasn't joking. She wasn't trying to spook anyone. She looked genuinely startled. Chris kind of laughed like, sure you did. And we all tried to play it off, but my stomach dropped because I had seen something similar. I told her, okay, you're going to think I'm crazy, but I've noticed shadows too. After that, though, things calmed down. Like nothing. For a long time. Fast forward to 2023. We've got a little one now, our toddler, Beck, who's at that stage where he's glued to my wife, Lena, constantly. He'd been sleeping in our bed a lot, and I'd end up on the couch more nights than I'd like to admit, just so everyone could actually get some sleep. And one night, this is the one that still gives me that weird heat in my chest when I think about it. I wake up, and I'm instantly alert. Like my body woke up before my brain did. I open my eyes, and I swear I see a dark silhouette standing in the living room, maybe 10 feet away from the couch. Not moving, just there. And listen, I'm not proud of this, but I think I yelled. Like a real, startled, half-asleep scream. Because the next morning Lena was teasing me. She's like, what was that last night? I heard you from the bedroom. I tried to laugh it off, but I remember sitting there thinking, okay, that one didn't feel like a trick of the light. I got up, turned them off, checked the doors out of habit, and went back to bed. A few nights after that, I wake up again, dead middle of the night, to this sound that's so specific it's hard to mistake. Like a hand slapping the blinds. Not ripping them or pounding them, but a steady smack, smack, against the slats. Harder than a breeze. Harder than something shifting from air pressure. It sounded like someone testing them. I just laid there listening, completely still, trying to decide if I was about to get up and investigate, or if I was about to pretend I never heard it. And honestly, I didn't find some dramatic explanation. No big ending. No, then we moved out the next day. We didn't. Because the truth is, we love this house. We really do. It's home. It's where our life is. And whatever this is, if it's anything at all, it hasn't felt violent or threatening. More like strange. Like the house has an echo of something that happened long before we showed up. So yeah, I don't even know what I'm looking for by telling you this. Maybe just to say it out loud. Maybe to see if it sounds as weird to someone else as it feels when you're lying there in the dark, staring at a doorway that suddenly feels just a little too full. But all in all, I'm not panicking. I'm just curious, and maybe a little creeped out. Could be nothing at all, but it's definitely interesting. So, let me take you back to the early 90s, around 93, I think. I was about 8, maybe 9, and my baby sister Ellie had just arrived, so our little place suddenly felt tiny. There were 6 of us all together, and because money was always tight, we'd been on a council waiting list for what felt like forever. When we finally got offered a house, it felt like we'd won something. It was a pretty normal 3-bedroom semi with a big back garden, Honestly, the garden was amazing. For a few weeks, everything was fine, even exciting. And then, something shifted. I was a laid-back kid. No big fears, no anxiety, nothing like that. But about a month after we moved in, I started getting this creeping unease. Like the air inside the house had weight to it. That's the only way I can describe it. Like you were walking around with something pressing down on you. The worst of it was in the bedroom I shared with my older brother, Callum. During the day, it was faint, but at night, it was like someone was there, watching. Not in a dramatic Hollywood way, more like that awful feeling you get when you're sure you're being stared at, even though you can't prove it. Then came the sounds. My parents wrote everything off as old house noises, pipes clanking under the floorboards, soft scratching up in the loft, the usual stuff. But there was one sound I couldn't explain, and it's the one that still makes my skin prickle when I think about it. It was like whispering, like a television turned down so low you can't catch the words, only the shape of them. A muffled, bassy murmur. You could hear it, but you couldn't understand it. And somehow, that made it worse, because my brain kept trying to turn it into language. After a few months, I was a mess. I'd sit at the top of the stairs crying, night after night, too scared to go into the bedroom, too scared to even turn around and look down the hallway behind me. My parents thought I was playing up, trying to dodge bedtime, trying to get attention. So they ignored it. And most nights, I'd just fall asleep right there on the landing. Then one evening, my mom and dad had a neighbor over. Just a casual drink, a bit of a chat. I remember lying there on the stairs, pretending I was asleep, listening. My mom started telling her about me, the crying, the fear, the strange things I'd been saying. And the neighbor, this woman named Denise, gave a little laugh and went, "Oh, it'll be old Arthur then." I remember lifting my head like, "What?" She said there'd been an elderly man living in the house before us. Quiet, kept to himself. Apparently he kept pigeons, had them out back, and always had a couple of dogs. And then she said, all casual, like she was talking about the weather, that he'd died in the house. And nobody found him for ages. Not days. Months. She said the council only got involved because the garden had turned into a jungle, brambles everywhere, and people started complaining about the smell. The place had been empty for a while after that, while they cleaned it and made it fit to rent again. I don't know what happened in my head after hearing that, but it was like a switch flipped. I went from frightened kid scared to absolutely convinced something was wrong in that house. My parents finally clocked that this wasn't me being dramatic. Not long after, we managed to do a house swap closer to my nan, who wasn't well at the time. We stayed in that place about a year in total, but it felt longer, like it left a mark on me. And here's the part that gets me. I got chatting to one of his colleagues. Her name was Mariah, and we started talking about the old area. Somehow that house came up. I made a joke like, "Oh yeah, the haunted one." And she laughed, this weird little laugh, and said, "Wait, are you talking about the house on Hawthorne Close?" I just stared at her. Turns out she'd rented it within the last year, and she told me, no hesitation, that she lasted 3 weeks. 3. Because her kids started complaining about the same things I used to. Feeling watched at night, weird noises, that heavy feeling in the air. Then she went quiet and said the final straw happened when she was home alone. She swore a broom was thrown, properly thrown, down the stairs at her, like someone had picked it up and hurled it, hard. She said she grabbed her keys and the kids and didn't go back in that house unless she absolutely had to. And the cherry on top? She said the neighbor next door told her it's basically a running joke on the street, that the house is haunted by an old man, and the story people tell is that he was eaten by his own dogs. I just sat there, listening to her, feeling about 8 years old again. Because for years I'd told myself it was nothing, that I was a kid in a dark house, letting my imagination run wild, that my brain was just filling in gaps. But hearing someone else, years later, no connection to me, describe the same feelings, the same sort of experiences, it was strange, kind of bittersweet. Like that chapter of my life reached out and tapped me on the shoulder and went, "You weren't imagining everything." And honestly, I still don't know what I believe, but I know that house made me feel something I've never felt anywhere else before, or since. And part of me still wonders if I was right all along. So, this happened a few years back when I was working nights at a big retail store in Conroe, Texas, around 2018 or so. I was pretty close with a coworker named Marisol. She was older than me, the kind of woman who always showed up and did her job, but you could feel this quiet weight around her, like she'd been carrying something heavy for a long time. One afternoon, she pulled me aside and asked, real softly, if I'd be willing to stay the night at her place on a certain date. At first I thought maybe she was sick or scared to be alone, but then she told me why. It was the anniversary of her son's death. She'd been thinking about reading his autopsy report, but she didn't know if she could handle it. And she lived alone, no family nearby, no one to sit with her or distract her, even just for one night. I told her yes, of course I did. And then I went home and tried to carry on like it was just a normal plan. But the next night, before I ever went to her place, something happened that still makes my stomach flip when I think about it. I was at home, doing one of my favorite things, coloring. I had one of those super detailed fantasy coloring books. You know, tiny patterns, vines, animals hidden in leaves. I was totally relaxed. And then, out of nowhere, it was like my brain got hijacked. I didn't see something with my eyes. It was more like a sudden memory that didn't belong to me. A man's image just snapped into my mind, sharp as a photograph. He looked ordinary, but weirdly specific. Buzzed hair, a baseball cap, an old white sleeveless shirt, and faded denim jeans. The kind that look like they've been worn every day for years. And the part that made my skin go cold, he was missing part of one ear, like it had been torn or blown away. I could not shake it. I tried going back to coloring and telling myself, okay, that was a random intrusive thought. But it wouldn't stop. The image stayed planted in my head. And then came the words. Not like I heard a voice in the room, more like a sentence drifting through my thoughts that didn't feel like mine. Tell Mama I'm okay. I'm all right. It just kept repeating, over and over. Tell Mama I'm okay. I remember actually putting my pencil down and sitting there like, what is happening to me? Because I'm not someone who normally has experiences like that. I don't mess with seances. I don't go looking for ghosts. I'm just me. Finally, in my head, I kind of snapped back at it. At him, at whatever it was. Like, who are you? Why are you in my mind? And the only thing that came back was the same message. Tell Mama I'm okay. Then another phrase dropped in, just as clearly. Blue flowers. Tell her about blue flowers. She'll know. That's when I got scared. Not horror movie scared. More like, this is going to break somebody's heart scared. Because I knew exactly who Mama was. And I avoided Marisol the next day. I'm not proud of that, but I did. I kept thinking, what if I'm wrong? What if I say this and I hurt her and I look completely unhinged? I hadn't even known what her son looked like. She'd never described him. She'd never told me how he died. So why did I have this whole picture in my head? I asked another coworker, someone I trusted, without giving all the details, just enough to say, Something weird happened, and I think I need to tell Marisol something, but I'm terrified. And my coworker just looked at me and said, if it's for her, you have to. She didn't interrupt once. She just stared at me, like she was trying to decide whether I was lying or crazy or something else. And the second I finished, her face crumpled. She broke. Not just teary-eyed, she collapsed into this deep, shaking sob that sounded like it had been stored up for years. I panicked. I grabbed her hands. I started apologizing over and over like, I'm so sorry, I shouldn't have said anything. And she cut me off. Through tears, she said, No, don't you apologize. Then she told me the truth she'd never said out loud at work. Her son had taken his own life. He shot himself in the head. And that's why, the ear. Then she said, almost whispering, and his favorite flowers were bluebonnets. I swear to you, I felt my whole body go numb. She told me she'd been praying, begging, really, for a sign. She wanted to know if she should read the autopsy report, if it would bring her closure or just rip her open again. And she'd asked him specifically, if you don't want me to read it, please send me something, anything. And then I showed up with a message. Tell Mama I'm okay. Blue flowers. We stood out there in the parking lot for a long time. The air felt thick, like the world had slowed down around us. I hugged her, and she kept repeating, He's okay, he's okay. I went home that night and just sat in silence. I couldn't even explain what I was feeling. I wasn't proud or excited or anything like that. I was just stunned. And honestly, a little shaken. Because nothing like that had ever happened to me before. Not once. And it never happened again. So I still don't know what I am in that story. I don't know if I was just in the right place at the right time, or if, for one strange moment, I was a conduit for something I can't explain. All I know is this. It felt like he didn't want her to hurt herself by digging into details she could never unsee. It felt like he wanted her to hold on to the only thing that might actually bring her peace. That he was okay. And sometimes, even now, I wonder, why me? Why that night? Why did it come through so clearly? I still don't have an answer, but I'll never forget it. Okay, so this happened not too long ago, over the course of maybe 5 months, give or take. And I'm going to tell it like I lived it, in chunks, because if I try to do the whole thing in one go, my brain will wander off and start thinking about laundry or soup or the concept of time. So first, you should know, I've always been a ridiculously vivid dreamer. Even as a kid, I'd have these repeating dreams about specific faces, specific streets, specific rooms, and then years later I'd stumble into those exact people or places in real life, like my subconscious had been quietly pinning them on a corkboard for later. So I learned to pay attention, not in a I'm special way, more like, okay, clearly my brain is doing something weird again. Then, last year, this old woman started showing up in my dreams. But here's the thing, I wasn't dreaming about her. It was more like she would just appear, almost like she'd stepped into the dream from somewhere else. No dialogue, no storyline, nothing symbolic, just her, interrupting everything, and the moment she arrived, I'd pop awake like someone had yanked me by the collar. She had this pale, drawn face, deep-set eyes, a mouth that looked permanently unimpressed with the human experience, and she wore these faded robes that felt almost old world, like something between a monk and a peasant dress, honestly, kind of medieval. Tall, too. Too tall. The vibe was very stern statue in a forgotten church. Not exactly comforting. This went on for a couple of weeks, not every night at first, but it started happening more often. And then I noticed something that made my stomach do that slow little drop. Every time she appeared, I woke up at the exact same time. 3:30 a.m. on the dot. Now, I'm observant, but I can also be hilariously slow at connecting dots when I want things to be normal. So I was like, sure, it's probably nothing. Right up until the night it very much became something. Because one night, the entire apartment jolted awake. Me, my partner Miles, the dog, the cat, everyone. Because one of the guest room doors slammed shut with this violent, final-sounding bang. And yep, you guessed it. 3:30 a.m. We live somewhere warm, like humid warm, so we sleep with the windows open. And we're close enough to the water that wind sometimes whips through and makes the curtains jump, frames rattle, all of that. But that night, the air was dead still. No breeze, no weather, nothing. Also, these weren't light doors. These were heavy wooden doors, the kind that feel like they belong in an old hotel. And we had these strong wall magnets near the baseboards that hold the doors open. You have to tug to pull a door off them. So for that door to slam shut like that, it wasn't a casual drift. And in a moment of pure, classic horror movie decision-making, I got up alone to investigate. Because of course I did. I opened the guest room door and stepped inside, and immediately, it felt like I'd walked into a refrigerator. Like sharp, unnatural cold. The kind that makes your skin tighten. Which again, makes no sense. Our place never gets that cold. Ever. And standing there, I could feel it. Presence. Not in a jump scare way. More like the room had an extra weight in it. Like the air had a mind. I didn't feel threatened exactly. I wasn't trembling. But I knew I wasn't alone in there. And in my head I just went, oh, it's her. When I crawled back into bed, I leaned close to Miles and whispered, half awake, like I was commenting on the weather. I think we have a ghost. He made a noise that was basically, "Oomph," and we all went back to sleep. But after that, I started noticing things. Like once your brain admits, okay, something's off, you can't unsee it. And Miles, who stayed up late gaming, started seeing her too. Not full on, not like, hello ma'am, but like a shape drifting from room to room, or a figure standing just outside his peripheral vision. Enough to make him pause and take his headphones off and go, babe, no. She never really bothered me, but the constant movement, the pacing through the space, it was unsettling everyone else. It felt like she wanted my attention, specifically, like she was waiting for me to do something. The problem was, I'm sensitive, but I'm not exactly trained in how to have a calm conversation with an ancient, terrifying dream nun. So I called my friend Leora. Leora is one of those people who can tune in like it's a radio station. She's a channeler, very grounded, very normal about it, which somehow makes it even weirder. A session with her feels like chatting over tea, except then she'll suddenly say something so specific it makes your scalp prickle. So I told her everything. The dreams, the door slam, the cold, the timing. We opened the session and almost immediately she described the woman. Perfectly. The height, the robes, the hollow eyes, the harsh mouth. Like she'd seen her herself. And then she got quiet for a while. Like she was listening to something I couldn't hear. Finally, she said, very carefully, "You knew her before." And what she explained, this is where it gets heavy. She said that a long time ago, she placed it around the late 1400s or early 1500s, I'd been under this woman's control. Not a friendly mentorship, more like captivity dressed up as teaching. That I'd lived in her house, kept hidden, learning practices I didn't fully understand, working with energies that weren't exactly benign. That she dictated everything. When I slept, when I ate, whether I was allowed outside. that the relationship was power-heavy, manipulative, and that she benefited far more than I did. And I remember sitting there like, okay, cool, love that for me. So I asked the obvious question, why now? What does she want? And Leora said, she wants to teach you again. She thinks it's her turn to come back into your life, to help sharpen your intuition. She'll wait until you're ready. And if you don't want this, she will leave, but you have to tell her to. Then she checked in with my guides, because yes, apparently I have a celestial advisory board, and their energy was basically one big caution sign. Like, be careful. If you engage, be crystal clear on your boundaries. And also, this part made my stomach twist. She warned that the darker energies connected to that old life might still recognize me. Like old acquaintances hearing your name again and showing up uninvited. And I've dealt with dark attachments before. Once was enough. So I was not thrilled. But I'm also a curious idiot, so part of me went, well, what if I could learn something? So with Leora's help, I essentially told the old woman, you can stay for now, but you need to stop creeping around my home. Stop scaring the animals. Stop terrorizing my sleep. If you're waiting, you wait respectfully. We closed the session. I went home, and for a moment, I thought it worked. And then the apartment went completely sideways. For the next few days, it was chaos. Random knocks, shifting shadows, that feeling of movement just out of view. The pets were constantly alert, nervous, skittish. Miles and I barely slept. And when we did, the dreams were intense and nasty, like our minds were being dragged through muddy water. I'd find myself whispering into empty rooms, hey, we had an agreement. You can't stay if this keeps happening. Which, yes, I know. Issuing ultimatums to invisible entities is not exactly a power move, but I was tired. Eventually things calmed down again. Sort of. But then came the smell. So now I wasn't just dreaming her. I wasn't just sensing her. I was smelling her. Nope. Absolutely not. I knew then. She had to go. But I also knew I didn't have the strength, or honestly, the clean focus, to do it alone. And that's when my other friend came into it. Santi, who's a shamanic practitioner. He was visiting, and when I told him what was happening, he didn't flinch. He just went, okay, we can clear it. Then he listed what I needed to gather. Florida water, red and white carnations, sandalwood oil, sage, candles, a bell, newspaper. And then, casually, he said the word exorcism, which is one of those words that makes your body go cold even if you don't believe in it. The night before he came over, I was nauseous, like deep, rolling nausea that wouldn't quit. I barely slept. The dreams were awful. The pets were edgy. Miles was tense. The whole apartment felt like it was holding its breath. In the morning, after Miles left for work, Santi arrived and immediately had me open every window and door. We lit candles. We smudged every corner. And the sage, this was wild. It didn't just smoke. It cracked and popped, spitting little sparks into the air like it was angry. I'm not proud to say it, but I sacrificed 2 duvet covers that day. Little burn holes. Tiny casualties of spiritual warfare. Both animals vanished under their beds and stayed there like, good luck, humans. Santi pulled out his phone compass to confirm directions for calling the corners. East, west, north, south. And his compass was completely off. Like, wrong enough to notice. I corrected him because I know the layout of my home, but I remember thinking, is she messing with this? Then we started. Santi began drumming, low, steady, like a heartbeat, and calling on protectors, the elements, the animal spirits, all of it. I followed behind, ringing my altar bell while he sprayed Florida water through the space. And I swear to you, Two thoughts kept looping in my head the entire time. What are the neighbors thinking? I am absolutely going to throw up. Spoiler, I was right. He moved room to room with the red carnations, dipping them in the spirit water and sweeping them through the air like he was brushing something invisible off the walls. He tossed the used flowers onto newspaper spread out on the coffee table. And halfway through, he suddenly stopped, rushed to the bathroom, and got violently ill. And the second he did, my body went, "Oh, we're doing this too." And I sprinted for the other bathroom. Two grown adults, spiritually cleansing an apartment, simultaneously throwing up in separate bathrooms. Just very glamorous work. When we recovered, he finished the ritual, drumming faster now, singing loud, like he was pushing something out with sound. And I could feel the energy shifting, like pressure changing before a storm breaks. My throat was raw from smoke and being sick, but I joined in anyway. I sang as loud as I could, because something in me knew. Whatever this was, it responded to force, to intention, to vibration. When it was over, he placed the white carnations in a vase on the table and said, "If the clearing worked, these will still be white tomorrow." After he left, I wrapped the red carnations in newspaper and carried them down near the shoreline and buried them under a big tree, something thick and rooted, like it could hold what I was releasing. I didn't even have the energy to analyze how the apartment felt afterward. I just collapsed into bed and slept for hours, mourning my poor, scorched bedding like a responsible adult. The next morning, I woke up and went straight to the vase. The white carnations were still white. And later that day, I buried them too, under a different tree in the park, and I was suddenly starving. I went home to an apartment that felt normal, quiet, ordered, like the air belonged to us again. I kept paying attention for days after, waiting for 3:30, waiting for the cold, waiting for the smell, waiting for her shadow at the doorway. But she was gone, and nearly a year later, still gone. So, yeah, that's the story. I know it's a lot. My life has been sprinkled with weird, spooky things like that. But this one really left a mark. If you ever want to hear another, you tell me. So I've got this question that's been sitting in the back of my throat for years, and being down here again has finally pushed it up into the open. My partner, Evan, grew up around this part of southern Arizona. Not exactly in the middle of nowhere, but close enough that the mountains feel like they're always watching the edge of town. He was raised outside a little mining place called Lowell Ridge, not far from the border, and he left young. Ever since I've known him, he's acted like that whole stretch of country is something you don't poke at. Like you don't go digging around in it, you don't wander too far, and you definitely don't stay out after dark. For a long time, I thought it was just complicated feelings, family stuff, old memories, the kind of place you outgrow and don't feel like revisiting. But every time I'd suggest we go back, he'd shut it down fast. Not angry, not defensive, just flat, final. And once, he said something that stuck with me because it felt so oddly chosen. He said, "Something's not right in those mountains. Not dangerous, not rough, not there are people you don't mess with, just not right." Well, this summer we had to come down. Evan's got family business to handle, and I managed to convince him to let me bring the kids, Mara and Jules, so it could be a real trip instead of him doing it alone and tense and exhausted. And the thing is, the town itself is lovely, like genuinely. Bright mornings, friendly little restaurants, the smell of dust and creosote after the sprinklers kick on. I've been enjoying it more than I expected. But Evan's been acting like someone put a tight wire inside his chest. In the daytime, he's almost normal. We've gone on drives, those winding roads where the saguaros stand like they're posing for postcards. We've done short hikes. We'll stop for cold drinks, take pictures, Listen to the kids bicker about who saw the most lizards. But the minute evening starts to settle in, like right when the light goes from gold to copper, he changes. It's subtle at first. He starts checking the sky, checking the horizon. He'll glance down side roads like he's counting how many exits we have. His voice gets clipped, like he's trying not to let the kids hear tension in it. And then he gets insistent. We're going back. Now. Not after dark. And it's not the normal kind of caution. It's not, I don't want to hit a deer. It's not, I'm tired. It's like he believes the rules are real. Like if we break them, something notices. One night we were just outside town, barely. We'd taken the kids to look at the sky because it's so clear here, and Mara loves constellations. We weren't even deep in the mountains, just near a turnout where you can see the ridgeline. The sun dropped, the temperature dipped, and it was like someone flipped a switch in him. He said, "We're leaving." And the way he said it made my stomach tighten. Not because he was loud, because he was quiet. The kind of quiet where you realize he's not asking. Back at the hotel, he didn't relax until the door clicked behind us and the deadbolt slid into place. Then he finally exhaled like he'd been holding his breath the whole drive. So I asked him again. I've asked him before, but this time I tried to do it gently, like I wasn't cornering him. "Ev," I said, "what is it? Are you worried about wildlife? People? What?" And he did the same thing he always does. He gave me the vague version, the foggy version. Weird stuff happens out there. That's it. That's all he offered. And I pushed a little, because I couldn't help it. Weird stuff like what? And after that, he shut down completely. The next day we were on a trail. Nothing intense, just a family hike. The kind with scattered shade and little rocks that crunch under your shoes. The kids were ahead, arguing about who got to lead, and I was behind Evan, enjoying the breeze and the smell of sun-warmed pine. Then he stopped so abruptly I nearly bumped into him. He didn't say, "Let's take a break." He didn't point at anything. He just went still, like he was listening. His shoulders tightened, his jaw clenched, and he said, "We're turning around. Right now. No debate." I glanced around, thinking maybe he'd seen a snake or fresh tracks, something practical. But there was nothing. Just trees, shadows, the trail curving ahead like it always does. And I'll be honest, I felt it then too. Not fear exactly, more like the air had changed texture. Like the space between the trees was suddenly deeper than it should be. Like there were places your eyes slid away from without realizing it. The hairs lifted on the back of my neck for no reason I could name. We went back down the trail quickly. Evan kept glancing over his shoulder, not in a dramatic way, more like he couldn't stop himself. Like his body remembered something. That's what's getting under my skin. Because Evan isn't easily spooked. He's a veteran. He's been in places where unsafe is the default setting. He's calm in emergencies. He's the person who stays level when everyone else is panicking. So when he is scared, when he's scared in that quiet, controlled way, it makes me think this isn't just childhood imagination or family baggage. And now I'm here, in a town I actually like, with my kids sleeping a few feet away, and I keep thinking about how the mountains look at dusk, how the shadows stretch down the slopes like fingers, how quickly the dark arrives. And I find myself wondering, half curious, half uneasy, if there are stories people tell down here. Legends locals repeat with a laugh that's just a little too forced. Because Evan won't give me a straight answer. All I know is this. He treats the mountains like they have rules. And he treats nighttime like a door you don't open. So if there's a myth for that, if there's a name for the thing he's afraid of, I feel like I need to hear it. Not to prove him right, just to understand what he's been carrying all these years, and why, the moment the sun starts to slip, It feels like the whole landscape is holding its breath. So, this is something my mom and I do together, and I know how that sounds right out of the gate. We go on paranormal investigations, like, for real, weekend trips, late nights, flashlights, recorders, the whole thing. And honestly, it's been weirdly healing for us. We used to butt heads a lot, but when you're standing shoulder to shoulder in an empty building at 1 a.m., you learn how to trust each other again. We've traveled all over the Midwest, old schools, abandoned hospital wings, a former psych facility once that still gives me chills to think about. But the story that sticks with me most happened at this one big old estate. It's not a manor anymore, not officially. These days it's used for something else, and they don't really want public ghost groups coming through like they used to. So I'm not saying where it is, and I'm not using the real names. I'll just tell you what we learned and what happened. I'll call the couple who built it Edwin and Lillian. Edwin and Lillian were the kind of people who hosted parties with real silverware and a string quartet, local royalty, the it couple of their little region. The house matched that energy. Basement, 3 full stories, attic, and a ballroom on the top floor because Lillian loved to entertain. And this was back when indoor plumbing with hot and cold water was something you bragged about like it was a sports car. But the thing is, Lillian was bold. She liked European art, Renaissance stuff, and she had this mural painted on the ceiling of her bedroom. A woman in it, kind of sheer and dreamy and unapologetic. Lillian loved it. The town? Not so much. People came over, saw it, and suddenly Lillian wasn't charming anymore. She was scandalous. The invitations dried up. The smiles turned thin. And while all that was happening, Edwin kept getting pulled away for legal trouble, months at a time, not just in their local courts, but out east in D.C. So Lillian was stuck in this massive house that had been built for laughter and music. And she was just there, alone in it. And then, the part that always makes my stomach drop. Lillian got sick. Stomach cancer, from what we were told. Morphine for the pain. One night, with Edwin away, she took too much. Whether it was an accident or something heavier than that, I don't know. But she didn't wake up. After that, the building changed hands and changed purposes. At one point, it was used like a sanitarium, later a nursing home. The records from those years are messy. People whisper about things that happened there, the kind of things that don't end up in neat little history books. A lot of it is guesswork and rumor, but even the idea of it makes the air in the place feel stained. Anyway, that's the setup. So the night we investigated, things started happening early, like the building didn't need warming up. Now, I should tell you, I'm the type of person people label sensitive. I don't go around advertising it because it sounds dramatic, but I pick up on things. Emotions, presences. Sometimes it feels like walking into a room and immediately knowing someone had just been crying there, even if the room is empty. So we're on the 2nd floor at one point, and Lillian's bedroom is behind me. A few of us are talking quietly about her, about how lonely she must have been, how the house that was meant for parties turned into this kind of gilded cage. And there's this music box sitting on a stairwell between the 2nd and 3rd floor that is absolutely losing its mind. Like going off again and again, louder than it should, faster than it should. Everyone's staring at it, arguing about whether it's a glitch or a draft or whatever. And right behind me, from inside Lillian's room, I hear, clear as a person standing close to your ear, "I'm here." I froze. I turned, and in the center of the room, there was a mannequin wearing this old dress, and right in front of the dress, like it was hovering in the fabric, was this big white orb. Not a little floating speck. Big, like the size of a grapefruit, maybe bigger. It floated, slow and steady, and then it just drifted out of view and vanished. And of course, I was the only one who heard the words. Someone had a recorder going, and later you can barely catch it, but the music box is so loud it's almost swallowed. Still, I know what I heard, and I need what I saw. Later on, the investigators wanted to try something on the 3rd floor. Up there, when you reach the top of the stairs, there's a hallway straight ahead, and then stairs going up to the attic. Ballroom to the left. To the right, this smaller hallway that always felt wrong to me. The wall on one side doesn't go all the way up to the ceiling. There's this open gap at the top, like 2 or 3 feet of space where you can see over into the next area. It shouldn't matter, but it does. Something about it makes you feel exposed. They decided to sit me there alone, blindfolded, noise-canceling headphones, spirit box in my hands. Everyone else went down to the 2nd floor to ask questions, and I was basically supposed to be a human antenna and listen. Apparently, they'd tried it earlier with someone else and gotten almost nothing. With me, it was like somebody turned on a faucet. Answers came fast. Dates, times, how many people were in the house, who they wanted to talk to. One voice got sharp and annoyed when a certain investigator spoke, like immediately reacted. And the weirdest part? They told me later that my voice changed while I was answering, like I'd shift tone and cadence depending on what was coming through. I don't remember doing that, but I believe them. My mom's not the kind of person who makes things up to be spooky. It was supposed to last maybe 5 minutes. It went on for almost 20. Every time they'd say, "Okay, we're pulling her out," the spirit box would spit out something like, "Not yet," or "We're not done." And I know that sounds like a horror movie line, I know. But that's the truth of it. We left. Got food somewhere like people do after something intense. Tried to joke about it. Tried to come down from the adrenaline. And I thought that would be the end of it. It wasn't. About 6 months later, I started dreaming about that estate. And not vague dreams, specific. Like my brain had a map. In the dream, I'd pull up to the building and immediately recognize it. I'd walk through the entrance, past displays on the 1st floor, mannequins dressed in old outfits, hats in glass cases. Then I'd start up the stairs toward the 2nd floor, and at the landing, there's this mirror. In the dream, I always stopped there, and I would just stare into it, waiting, like I knew something was supposed to step out. Then I'd end up in Lillian's bedroom, and she'd be there, this woman, head tilted slightly like she's trying to understand something that doesn't make sense. And she'd ask me every time, "Where is everyone?" And then, softer, almost hurt, "Why aren't they coming to see me anymore?" And then the dream would jump, like someone snapped their fingers, and suddenly I'm on the 3rd floor, back in that same hallway where I'd been blindfolded during the session. Except now it's different. I'm not seeing it from inside my own body. I'm watching myself like I'm standing off to the side, like a spectator. I can see myself sitting there, blindfolded, hands resting, completely unaware. And above me, hanging over that half wall that doesn't reach the ceiling, are these black humanoid shapes. 3 of them. Their arms draped over the top of the wall like they're leaning on a railing, just watching me. No faces, no details. Just the shape of something person-like, made out of darkness. And then, every single time, my dream would rip me out of that house and drop me somewhere else. A different location entirely, about a couple hours away. I'd be outside long enough to recognize where I was, and then I'd be inside, standing in this infamous corridor that locals call something like the Runner's Hall, a place people talk about the way they talk about sinkholes, like it's just waiting. Everything would be silent, and then a voice would say, "Where's Nolan?" And that was the cue, that exact moment. Every time I heard that question, I would jolt awake. This happened 6 nights in a row. 6. By the 3rd night, I was tired. By the 5th, I was unsettled in a way I can't explain. Like it wasn't just my subconscious remixing a scary memory, like something was using the dream to get a message through. So I finally reached out to the people from the investigation team and told them what I kept hearing. That Lillian was asking where everyone went, why nobody was visiting anymore. That helped a little, but the dreams didn't stop. And then on the next night, when the dream jumped to the 2nd location and the voice asked, "Where's Nolan?" It hit me. This wasn't just about Lillian. It was like the 2nd place was calling for him. I didn't have a way to contact Nolan directly, so I had to tell someone else who could reach him. I basically said, "This is going to sound insane, but please tell him that location is calling out for him." And after that, the dreams stopped. Mostly. Welcome back to Paranormal M. It's finally my favorite time again, sitting down and sharing the paranormal experiences you sent in. Thank you so much for your stories. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss the latest videos on the channel. Now, get comfy, put your headphones on, and let's dive into today's story. So I've told this story a few times online, but I've never really just sat down and told it like I was talking to a friend. So that's what I'm doing with you now. I grew up in eastern Kentucky, in a decent-sized town tucked into the mountains. It's the kind of place where the fog hangs low in the mornings and everybody knows everybody's business. Around here, ghost stories are just part of the landscape. Folks swap them on porches like recipes. Some of them turn into full-on local legends. But this one, my family story, never really made it that far. It mostly just stayed with us. My dad, Mark, grew up way out on one of those back roads that feel like they go on forever. I always tell people, if you've ever seen one of those horror movies where the GPS stops working and the trees seem to close in around you, yeah, that's the kind of place I mean. Old cabins, busted trailers, rusting cars in yards, and every now and then, some abandoned building just sitting there, like it's waiting. Dad was one of 3 brothers. His oldest brother, Doug, died of a heart attack a few years back. His middle brother, my Uncle Ray, is the one this story is really about. Ray passed away from cancer in 2018. Now, Uncle Ray had been kind of distant from the family for a long time. He'd moved around a lot, bigger towns, different counties, never stayed in one place too long. But in 2015, he got diagnosed with a really aggressive form of cancer. Not long after, he called my dad and said he wanted to come back home. He had a new wife, Lisa, and a little girl, Maddie, and he wanted to be closer to family. One evening, out of the blue, he called my dad and said, "I found us a place. It's not far from y'all. Come on out and see it, and bring whatever you can to help us get settled." So we loaded up what we could, an extra mattress, some old chairs, a box of dishes, with the help of our neighbor, Mr. Jenkins, and headed out. We drove for close to an hour, farther and farther away from town. The paved road turned to cracked pavement, then to gravel, then to that kind of road where you start praying you don't meet another car because there's nowhere to pull off. Eventually, we came to this steep gravel driveway that went almost straight up a hill. I mean, it felt like if you let off the gas for half a second, the truck would just slide backwards. There was a drop-off on one side that made my stomach knot up, and dense woods on the other side pressing in. We crawled up that hill, tires slipping on loose rock, and finally made it to the top. That's where the cabin was. It sat right in the middle of the woods like it had grown there. Tin roof, old wood siding gone gray with age, a big rock cliff rising up behind it, and thick trees all around. The place was quiet. Not peaceful quiet, more like the world was holding its breath. I stepped out of the truck and just stood there for a minute. Something felt off. I didn't know what yet, but I felt it in my gut. The driveway formed a rough circle in front of the cabin, and right in the center of that ring was this old, overgrown garden. The kind that used to be pretty once, but had been forgotten. Dead bushes, tangled weeds, a few stubborn flowers trying to hang on. And right there, half sunk into the ground at an angle, was a flat grave marker. I remember stopping mid-step. It was one of those little plaques you see in older cemeteries. I brushed some dirt and grass off with my shoe and read it. It was for a baby, a stillborn son. He'd died at birth, sometime in the late 70s if I remember right. The family's last name was there too. I went inside after that, still thinking about that little grave, and asked Uncle Ray what was up with it. He shrugged like it was just another odd detail and said, "Came with the place. The folks that lived here before us. They buried him there and just left it when they moved. Landlord said they never wanted it moved." Something about that bothered me more than the marker itself. Just the idea of a family leaving their baby's grave, like they were leaving an old washing machine behind. The inside of the cabin didn't feel much better. It was like the last people had left in a hurry. There were bed frames still in the bedrooms, an old dresser with half the drawers open, piles of clothes stacked on the floor in one room like someone had been packing and then stopped. In one of the smaller bedrooms, there were toys shoved into the closet, and I mean piled in there. Dolls, trucks, stuffed animals, board games with pieces spilling out. It was clearly a kid's room, and it looked like someone had grabbed the kid and left the toys behind. Out back, the yard opened up a bit, right before it hit the tree line and the rock cliff. And there, taking up most of the open space, was this huge black circle. A big round scorch mark in the ground, like something had been burned there. Not just a little bonfire either. The earth was charred in a perfect ring, and nothing was growing through it. Standing there, looking at the grave in the front and the burn mark in the back, I just remember thinking, whatever happened here, it wasn't good. My dad and Uncle Ray spent that evening in the kitchen, talking over what needed fixing. The place needed a lot of work. The roof leaked in one corner, a window was cracked, some of the wiring looked like a fire waiting to happen. They didn't have much money for furniture, so for a while, Uncle Ray, Aunt Lisa, and little Maddie all slept in one bed in the living room. Over the next couple of weeks, my dad and some of the other relatives started coming out regularly to help repair the place. I'd tag along sometimes, but even with people around, that cabin never stopped feeling wrong. You know how some houses feel welcoming, like they're glad you're there? This one felt like it was watching us and waiting for us to leave. That's when the weird stuff started happening. One night, Dad came home and he just looked tired. Not work tired, heavy tired. We were sitting at the table and he said, "Your Uncle Ray's not sleeping much." I asked why, and Dad said, "Because something's walking around that house at night, and it ain't any of them." They were all sleeping in the living room, and almost every night they heard footsteps in the hallway, moving back and forth. Doors would open and close on their own. Not just little creaks, full-on click and swing. They'd get up to check, thinking maybe the wind had blown something, but the windows were shut, and there was no draft. The footsteps never really stopped either, just pacing, like someone was restless. Aunt Lisa had her own share of things. One afternoon, she was washing dishes and looked up at the kitchen window. She swore she saw a little boy in overalls and a straw hat run past the window, just quick enough to catch with her eyes. She thought it was Maddie's cousin at first, so she went outside to fuss at him for playing near the steep hill. There was no one there. Another time, their daughter Maddie came in from the yard, all excited. She said, "Mama, I was playing with the boy, the one with the hat." She described him again, overalls, straw hat, about her size. She said they'd been playing near the rock cliff, but when Lisa went out to look, there was no sign of anybody. As all this was happening, Uncle Ray's health started going downhill faster. His pain got worse, the treatments were wearing him out, and he had to be hospitalized more and more often. But what really scared us weren't just the physical changes. It was how he started acting whenever he was at the cabin. One night, some of our cousins were visiting him there. Things had been especially active. Doors slamming, the sound of someone walking from room to room, even when everyone was in the living room together. At some point, Uncle Ray suddenly insisted on taking everyone into the back bedroom. He told them, "We need to stay in here. They're coming for me. I don't want them to get you too." Now, you hear something like that, and your first instinct is to chalk it up to the medication or the cancer getting to his mind. And maybe that was part of it. But the way my aunt described it, he was terrified, not confused, afraid. Like he could feel something closing in that nobody else could see. After that, he ended up back in the hospital for a while. But even when he wasn't staying at the cabin, whenever he talked about it, he'd say things like, "I don't think that place wants me there." Or, "Whatever's out there in those woods, it knows I'm weak." Things just kept escalating. The footsteps got louder. Doors that were locked would be found open. Once, they came back from a hospital trip and found every cabinet in the kitchen standing wide open. No sign of a break-in, nothing missing. Finally, the family had had enough. Between the fear and his health getting worse, they just couldn't stay there. They packed up what they could and left. Uncle Ray, Lisa, and Maddie moved in with my Aunt Carol closer to town, where he eventually passed away on hospice care. After he died, our family minister, Pastor Hall, went out to the cabin at the landlord's request. Whatever your beliefs are about that kind of thing, I'll just tell you what happened. He walked the property, prayed, and did what he called a cleansing, blessing the house, the land, even the little grave out front. He said the place felt heavy, like something had settled in there and didn't want to let go. A year or so later, the cabin burned down. No one was living in it at the time. The story we were told was that it was probably some kind of electrical issue, but the power had supposedly been off. By the time anyone got up that hill with water, there wasn't much left but the chimney, part of the metal roof, and that blackened ring in the backyard, darker and wider than before. Last time I went up there, which has been a while, it was just rubble and weeds. The grave marker was still there though, tilting a little further into the earth. I don't know what you believe about ghosts or demons or any of that. I'm not here to convince you of anything. I'm just telling you that my uncle went to that cabin sick, and whatever was already there seemed to notice. It felt like the place had soaked up years of grief and fear and never let them go, and he walked right into it at the weakest point in his life. Sometimes I think about that little baby's grave, the scorch mark in the yard, the kid in overalls running past the window, and I think about my uncle saying, "They're coming for me." And even now, miles and years away from that hill, it still gives me chills. You know how every small town has that place? For me, it was the old asylum on the hill. I grew up in this quiet little town where everyone pretended not to be obsessed with that building, but we all were. It was this abandoned, sprawling psychiatric hospital that you could see from almost anywhere. To most people, it was just a creepy landmark. To me, it felt personal. My nan, Eileen, had worked there as a psychiatric nurse, and my granddad, Tom, was a porter. I grew up on their stories. Well, the pieces of them they were willing to tell anyway. They never really went into the grisly details. It was more small things, The smell of disinfectant that wouldn't leave their clothes. The patients who loved gardening. The way the corridors echoed when it was quiet. So even as a kid, I was obsessed with the place. Not in a horror movie way, more in a "this is my family's history" way. I used to press my face to the car window whenever we drove past, trying to catch a glimpse of the broken windows or overgrown grounds. I knew there was no chance I'd be allowed inside back then, but I always told myself, one day, when I'm older. When I hit my teenage years and started going out more, my mom, her name's Claire, had one rule she repeated like a broken record. Don't go near the hospital. Not the building, not the grounds. Just stay away, all right? And honestly, I listened. I was weirdly obedient for a teenager. But it didn't kill the curiosity. If anything, it made it worse. I wanted to walk the same paths my grandparents had. I wanted to stand where they'd stood and actually see it, not just from the road, not from the safety of the car, but up close. Then we moved. Our new house was just around the corner from the old hospital. From my bedroom window, I could see the top of its roofline, broken and jagged against the sky. At night, if I twisted the blinds just right, I could catch the outline of the main block, silhouetted by the streetlights. That's when the obsession turned into something else. I started dropping hints to my mom constantly. We could just walk past it. Maybe just the driveway? Not inside, I promise. Just the grounds. Every time. No, it's dangerous, and it's private property. Until one day, she didn't say no. I still remember how casually she brought it up. We were in the kitchen. She was making tea, and I was half scrolling my phone, half staring out of the window, like usual. She just said, "If we went in the daytime, and we stayed outside, just the grounds, would that be enough for you?" I must have looked like a cartoon character, the way my jaw dropped. I kept waiting for her to say she was joking. Instead, she added, "But we don't go inside. The building's unstable, and there's asbestos everywhere. I mean it. We stay out." I agreed so fast it was almost embarrassing. Technically, going onto the grounds was trespassing, but getting in wasn't exactly a challenge. People broke in all the time. The fence had gaps like missing teeth. We found one wide enough to step through without even ducking. So there we were, just me and my mom, slipping through this torn section of fence into a different world. We followed a short path through a strip of woodland, only a couple of minutes long, really. It was quiet in that way that feels heavy, like the air itself is listening. Soft earth under our shoes, the faint sound of branches knocking together overhead. Neither of us spoke. We didn't need to. And then, suddenly, the trees ended. There it was, up close. It felt bigger, like it was leaning over us. Bits of the roof had collapsed. Ivy crawled up the walls, and graffiti covered almost every flat surface. Names, symbols, messages that didn't make sense anymore. We made our way around to the front, the part I'd only ever seen from a distance, driving past with my grandparents. Being right there on the gravel, looking up at those tall, broken windows was surreal. I kept imagining my Nan in her uniform, my granddad pushing trolleys along those corridors. For about 15 minutes, everything was calm. We walked slowly, stopping now and then so I could take quick photos on my phone. I didn't pose or anything. I just wanted to remember the angles, the doorways, the arches. I was buzzing, but in this quiet, reverent way. Then we heard it, the crunch of tires on gravel. Both of us froze. The sound got closer, then stopped, not far from where we were. A car door slammed. Heavy footsteps followed, the kind where the person isn't trying to be quiet at all. Then a man's voice, harsh, irritated, and instantly familiar, even though I'd never actually met him. The groundsman. Every town has its legends, and he was one of ours. People said he'd scream at trespassers, that he'd let his dog loose to chase them out. There were rumors about him threatening people, stories that got retold so many times no one knew what was true anymore. But his reputation alone was enough to keep most people away. Mom and I looked at each other, wide-eyed. No words, just that look. We sort of mime-acted a plan at each other. Back the way we came, quietly. Now. We turned around and started walking back, as lightly as we could manage. I could hear the man moving somewhere else on the grounds. At least, I hoped it was somewhere else, and not getting closer. Every little sound felt amplified. Our shoes on the gravel, a branch snapping underfoot, my own breathing. Still, even then, I couldn't resist. I lifted my phone and snapped a few more photos as we went. A broken staircase here, a crumbling archway there. I never stopped for more than a second. Click, walk. Click, walk. Somehow, we made it back to the fence without seeing him. We slipped through the gap onto the public footpath like we were emerging from underwater. By the time we reached the car, we both let out that same long, shaky breath, the kind that only comes out once you realize how tense you've been. On the drive home, I just kept saying, "Thank you, seriously, thank you for taking me." Mom smiled, but she was gripping the steering wheel tighter than usual. That night, we were back to normal life. Sitting in the living room, TV murmuring away, lamps on, everything soft and ordinary. Mom was half watching some crime drama. I'd put my earphones in and decided to scroll through the photos I'd taken. Now, this was back when live photos were still fairly new to me. I knew they existed, but I'd never really thought about the fact that they capture a little bit of sound with each picture. So I'm just scrolling, completely relaxed. I tap the first live photo from the hospital, and it comes to life for a second or two. All I hear is what I expect. The crunch of our footsteps on gravel, mine and Mum's. That's it. Next one, same thing. Gravel, a faint rustle, nothing weird. Then I get to this one shot of a crumbling archway that seemed to lead into an old corridor. Just darkness beyond it, thick and solid. I press down to play the live photo. For a moment, it's normal. Background noise, the soft scuff of my shoe. And then I hear it. A faint, childlike voice, right in my earphones, close, but somehow far away at the same time. R.I.P. me. I just stared at the screen, replaying it again and again, hoping I'd misheard. But no, same thing every time. That tiny voice, those 2 words. At this point, my hands were actually shaking, but I kept going. I don't know why. Curiosity, maybe. Or the horrible logic of, if there's one weird thing, maybe the others will explain it. I swiped to the next photo. At first, there's nothing unusual, just that ambient hiss that phones pick up, the sound of shoes moving over stones. Then, clear as day, a different voice cuts through. Older, sharper. Not my mom's, not mine. The kind of voice that sounds like it's right behind you. You fucked up. I froze. I don't think I even breathed. It wasn't just the words, though those were bad enough. It was the tone. There was this horrible certainty in it, like the speaker knew something I didn't. Like it wasn't a joke or a random mutter, but a statement. You fucked up. That was it. No laughter, no follow-up. Just that sentence, dropped like a stone into a lake. I went through every other live photo from that day. Thankfully, those were the only 2 with voices. But that almost made it worse. Why those 2? Why that archway? Why those words? Eventually, Mom glanced over and noticed how pale I was. "You all right?" she asked. I pulled my earphones out and just handed her the phone. "Listen," I said. She played the first one. I watched her whole expression change. The second she heard that small voice say, R.I.P. me, her eyebrows shot up and her mouth tightened. Then she went to the next one, the older voice, the swearing. Her reaction honestly scared me more than the recordings did. She looked rattled, properly shaken. "That's not us," she said quietly. "I know," I told her. And it wasn't. For one, neither voice sounded anything like us. The child's voice was lighter, almost echoey. The older one had this firm, almost clipped way of speaking, like someone who's used to being listened to. But more than that, I would never swear like that in front of my mom. Not then, not now. Even at 15, I was painfully self-conscious about that sort of thing around her. There is just no version of reality where I casually drop, "You f***ed up," within earshot of her and don't spontaneously combust from embarrassment. Of course, when we told other people later, they all said the same thing. "You must have been talking and not realized. It's probably someone in the distance. Phones distort things. It's just you. It has to be you." And I get it. That explanation is easier. It's neater. It fits. But the truth is, it doesn't. Because those voices weren't ours. They didn't sound like us, didn't feel like us. And those particular words, R.I.P. me. You f***ed up. Sometimes I catch myself wondering if that second voice was talking about us going there. Like some strange, belated warning preserved in a few seconds of video I didn't even know I was recording. Or maybe it was never about us at all. Either way, I still have those live photos. And every time I move them to a new phone, I tell myself I'm not going to play them again. But I always do. So, let me just tell you this the way I'd tell a friend over coffee. When I moved into my boyfriend's place, let's call him Daniel, everything started to fall apart. And I don't mean emotionally, I mean the apartment itself just gave up. Right before I moved in, a pipe in the ceiling between the hallway and the kitchen burst. It flooded the neighbor's place below us. For months, like almost 8 months, we had this ugly, open section of wall and ceiling with cables and pipes exposed, and a kitchen that was basically just decoration. We cooked on a little hot plate in the living room and washed dishes in the bathroom sink. It already felt like the apartment didn't want us there. From the very beginning, I felt uneasy in that place, especially in the narrow hallway that leads to the bathroom. You know that feeling when you're sure someone is standing just behind you, even though you know you're alone? That's what it's like every time I walk down that hall. One time, I went into the bathroom to get ready for a shower. I was about to pull my leggings down when I clearly felt something tug on the back of them. Not like a brush or static or anything, a definite tug, like fingers catching the fabric. I froze. I whipped around, half expecting to see Daniel there joking around. No one. I can't explain how much that freaked me out. My heart was pounding so hard I just stood there, breathing, telling myself I was imagining it. But it felt so real. The bedroom doesn't feel safe either. We later found out that water from the roof gutter had been leaking down the outside wall for who knows how long, which made the wall cold and damp. At night, as I'm lying in bed, I get this sensation that someone is pacing along that wall, or sometimes just standing by the corner, facing the bed. I don't see anything, but I feel it. It's like being watched from the doorway of a dark room. Lately, things have gotten weirder. The bathroom light is often on when no one's been in there. I'll walk past and think, "Oh, Daniel must be in there." But the door is open and it's empty. I make a point of turning the light off when I leave, and still, later on, it's glowing again. I also keep hearing these small tapping sounds near the metal trash can in there. Not just random building noises. It's rhythmic, like someone lightly flicking the edge with a nail. When I look, nothing's moved. Nothing's touching it. And then there's my phone. Sometimes I sit on the toilet scrolling through Instagram Reels, like you do. I'll pause a video, put the phone down out of reach so I can wash my hands, and while I'm at the sink, I hear it start playing again. Sometimes it even scrolls to the next video on its own. The first few times I tried to rationalize it. Maybe the screen glitched. Maybe I didn't tap properly. But it keeps happening, and always in that bathroom. The bathroom also gets freezing cold for no good reason. It's a tiny room. The heater in the apartment is on. The window doesn't even open fully. It's stuck half shut. Yet suddenly it's so cold in there that I can see my breath. Then I step back into the hallway, and the temperature feels normal again. It's not just the bathroom either. In the kitchen and living room, I sometimes hear the TV murmuring, like a late-night talk show playing in the background. I walk in to tell Daniel to turn it down, and the TV is completely off. No standby light, nothing. Other times I hear the delicate clinking of glass, like someone lightly tapping two glasses together or flicking the rim with a fingernail. I'll go check, expecting to find something tipped over. But every glass is exactly where it should be. No mess, no explanation. Just the echo of a sound that shouldn't have been there. In one dream, our bedroom and hallway looked exactly the same as in real life. I saw these pale, almost transparent figures walking in a slow line along the bedroom wall, heading toward the corner where it meets the hallway. Then they turned and walked back, one by one, toward the bathroom door. I watched them, and then I realized I was seeing myself too, lying in bed, asleep. And I was standing behind my sleeping body, just watching, unable to move or speak. The whole time I had this feeling that the figures weren't seeing me. They were circling something else. Us. The bed. That path between the bedroom and the bathroom. In another dream, I was floating above the bed, twisted into this uncomfortable position, like my body was bent wrong. One arm was stretched out toward the door. I couldn't move, couldn't speak, couldn't even blink. Then, out of nowhere, this smoky, dark hand formed around my outstretched fingers. It didn't grab my wrist, just gently closed over my fingertips and pulled. The sensation was so real that I woke up with my hand still reaching out, my fingers tingling. All of this has gotten to the point where Daniel and I are genuinely scared to go to the bathroom at night. We've started leaving the hallway light on and the bathroom door open whenever one of us has to use it. Neither of us wants to be the one walking down that dark hallway alone. There's this particular spot, right at the entrance to the bathroom in the hallway, that feels the worst. Every time I walk past it, I get this tight, heavy feeling in my chest, like stepping into a room where people have just been arguing. It doesn't matter if it's morning or afternoon, lights on or off. That patch of floor always feels wrong. If I had the chance, I'd show you a picture of it, because it looks completely normal. Just a hallway. But that's the place where I feel least alone, and not in a comforting way. I keep telling myself it's the stress, the water damage, the disruption of the renovations, the bad sleep. But there's a part of me that believes the apartment itself remembers every crack, every leak, every time the walls were broken open. And something else moved in through those openings and never really left. So, let me just start at the beginning. I grew up in northern Alaska, and if you've ever spent a summer up here, you know how strange the light can be. The sun just sort of forgets how to set. The nights are more of a dimmer switch than real darkness. But once you get up past the Arctic Circle, it's something else entirely. It feels like the world is stuck between day and night, and your brain never quite knows which way is up. Funny thing is, that's where you really start to fear the dark, when there isn't any. See, the old stories up here, the Inupiaq and Yupik and other native elders, they talk about beings called the Tornit. According to them, the Tornit were here long before their people paddled up to these shores. Big, strong, human-shaped, but not quite human. For a while, the story goes, They all lived in a kind of uneasy peace. But then, one day, an Inuit hunter's son killed a tornit in a fit of anger. Some say over a stolen kayak, some say over a woman. After that, the tornit vanished into the wild places, way back into the mountains and tundra. They didn't disappear, though. They just stopped being neighbors and became something else. Something you only meet when things have already gone wrong. Now, that old legend isn't mine to tell properly. If you want it, you should sit with an elder in one of the villages. They'll tell it the right way. I'm just giving you the short version, so what happened to me makes a little more sense. What is mine to tell is my own run-in with what we around here, those of us who aren't native, call the Alaskan Bushmen. My name's Eli, by the way. This was, a good few years back now. It was late June, the solstice week, the longest stretch of daylight we get. I'd been asked by a little coastal village called Tulik to help track down a problem bear, Big Brown, by the tracks. It had busted into one of their storage sheds and made off with a ridiculous amount of food. Up here, that's not just annoying, that's dangerous. Food is survival, especially for the folks who stay through the winter. So I loaded up my sled, hitched the dogs, and headed out over the tundra. Even in summer, some of those stretches are nothing but wind, ice crust, and low scrub bushes pretending to be trees. The bear's tracks were clear enough at first, big prints punched into softer patches of ground. I was mushing along at an easy pace. Can't run the dogs too hard or they'll burn out quick. When I started to feel like something was off. You ever get that sense that someone's watching you, but when you look around, there's nobody there? It was like that, but heavier. Like the air itself was paying attention. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw what I thought was a stunted black spruce out on a little rise. Tall, thin, just a dark shape against the washed-out sky. I didn't think much of it. This is Alaska. There's always some lone, weird tree where it shouldn't be. But after a while, I realized that tree hadn't been there before. And as we moved, it seemed to shift. Not closer, not farther, just always at the edge of my vision, in a place where a tree shouldn't be. I kept glancing over, trying not to spook myself. Every time I looked straight at it, it just sat there, innocent as anything, like a regular silhouette on the horizon. Then I blinked, just a normal blink, and it was gone. Not, I lost track of it. Not, maybe I misjudged the distance. Just gone, like someone erased it from the world. That's when the wind changed. A moment before, it had been a faint, almost warm breeze from the south, the kind that smells like wet earth and distant sea. Then, all at once, it swung around and hit me from the north, sharp and dry, like it had scraped its way across a glacier before it found me. It was a Chinook wind, but not the kind we welcome in winter. This one felt wrong. It carried this hollowness, like it was blowing out of a place that wasn't meant for people. I pulled my parka a little tighter without even thinking about it. One of the lead dogs, Runa, let out a low whine and flicked her ears back. The rest of the team got jittery, their paws dancing, but they kept moving. I looked up, and there they were. Not one shape this time, several. Tall, too tall to be any person I know. Broad shoulders, long arms that hung just a little too low. All of them standing dead still out ahead of us in the distance. Just shadows against the pale sky, like someone had cut human shapes out of the daylight. I slowed the team, brought them in a bit. The dogs didn't want to go forward. Tails low, ears flat, eyes rolling. They knew something I didn't. I squinted, trying to make out faces, or even just details, clothes, fur, anything. But there was nothing. No color, no features, just these dark cutouts in the light. And the feeling that came over me. It wasn't like being watched. I felt that plenty out hunting. This was different. This felt like being evaluated. That's the best way I can put it. Like they were studying me, weighing me, trying to decide if I was worth anything. Food, a threat, a curiosity, who knows? Every hair on my arms and the back of my neck stood up, goosebumps everywhere. My body knew before my brain did. This is bad. This is very, very bad. You need to go. I didn't say a word out loud. The wind would have eaten my voice anyway. I just shifted my weight, tightened my grip on the handlebar, and gave the slightest tug on the line to turn the sled around. I swear to you, the dogs did not wait for a command. The second I thought run, they were already moving. Runa barked once, sharp and panicked, and the whole team lunged like someone had fired a starting gun. The sled jerked so hard I nearly went off the runners. I wrapped my hands around the handle like it was the only thing holding me to the world, and bent my knees as we flew. I didn't look back. For a while, it felt like we were racing through a tunnel of shadows. I could see shapes flickering at the edges of my vision, tall forms pacing us, keeping up without effort. Every time I dared a glance to the side, there'd be this suggestion of a figure, just far enough away to not be clear, just close enough to make my heart hammer. No sound but the dogs panting, the runners scraping, and the wind screaming in my ears. Then, as suddenly as it had picked up, the wind changed again. It shifted to this strange, spiraling gust that almost sounded like laughing. Not human laughter, not anything I recognized. Just this high, thin, swirling sound, like the air itself was amused that I was running. And then, nothing. The shadows at the edges of my vision vanished. The pressure on my chest eased. The world went back to being just tundra and sky and the distant shape of the village behind us. I finally dared to slow the team. The dogs came down to a trot, then a walk, tongues lolling, sides heaving. I was shaking so hard I could barely keep my boots steady on the runners. I looked back the way we'd come. No tall shapes, no bear, no tracks except our own and the ones we'd been following, which just stopped. Like something had decided that was as far as I needed to go. I didn't see the bushmen again that day. I never did see that bear either. When I made it back to Tulik, one of the elders took one look at my face and just nodded, like he already knew. He didn't ask many questions, just said, "Sometimes they let you live with a warning. Listen next time." So now, when folks ask me if I believe in the Tornit, or the Alaskan Bushmen, or whatever name you want to give them, I tell them this. Up here, there are things that were walking this land before we had words for them. If you're lucky, you'll never meet them. But if you ever find yourself under a sun that refuses to set, with a wind that laughs and shadows that stand a little too still, turn your sled around. You don't want to find out what happens if they decide you are worth something. So, let me set the scene for you. It's late September, right on that edge where summer's officially given up, but winter hasn't quite shown its teeth yet. That's always the quietest time on the water. The tourists are gone, the gift shops are shuttered, and the birds have already taken the hint and headed south. Out there, when it's that quiet, you can hear everything. You hear the sea lions barking from the rocks, sounding like drunk men laughing in the fog. You hear the old wood of the docks creak with the tide, and you can hear the otters in the inlets, chittering and splashing, rolling around like they don't have a care in the world. But that's not the sound you need to worry about. The old-timers always said, it's when the otters start sounding like children crying. That's when you keep your ass off the water. Back then, I worked as a steward on the smaller ferries, the ones that handled locals and trucks, not the big cruise liners. My job was simple. Scrub the decks, clean the cabins, keep things tidy while we ran the quieter routes. I actually liked the off-season. Just us, the cold, and the sound of the ocean breathing. Some nights, when we were tied up at the less visited dock, the one with the moss-slick boardwalk and the busted lamp that never stayed lit, the older crew would start telling stories. There was this one old seaman, Joe, every boat's got a Joe, right? Who loved to talk about the otter folk. The Kushtaka, he'd say, real serious, like it wasn't a joke at all. That's what the local tribes call them, not just otters, not really. They walk on two legs when they want to. They change shape. They steal your voice, and they use it to call people off the shore, out to the rocks, out where nobody can help you. Now, I grew up around stories. You hear enough of them, you learn to nod, maybe act impressed, but deep down, you write it off as something meant to scare kids and green hands. That's all it was to me. Just sailor talk. Until I saw one. It was one of those nights the sky feels too big. The water was calm, the air crisp, and the moon was so bright it turned everything silver. Above that, the northern lights were hanging low, ribbons of green and a little purple, like someone had draped ghostly curtains across the sky. We were tied up near the mouth of the harbor, and I was alone on deck with a bucket, a stiff brush, and a bad playlist humming out of my phone. I remember I was scrubbing near the bow when I heard it, that click, click, click of claws on deck planks. Sharp, light, too deliberate to be the boat settling. You know the sound of a dog on hardwood? It was like that, nails that needed trimming. I froze, looked over my shoulder. Nothing, just the fog starting to roll in, soft as breath, the faint slap of water against the hull. I told myself it was probably a crab pot shifting or some loose hardware and went back to scrubbing. A minute later, there it was again. Click, click, click. Closer this time. I stood up, turned around, and that's when I heard it. A child crying. It was faint at first, thin and distant, like it was coming from far down the dock. But as I stood there, it changed. It got wetter, closer. But the sound wasn't coming from the land. It was coming from the water. My stomach dropped. Every story I'd shrugged off started lining up in my head one by one. I walked to the rail and looked over, expecting, I don't know, a kid in a life jacket, someone in the water, something I could deal with. Instead, I saw something else. Then it rolled slightly, like it wanted me to get a better look. Its shoulders were too narrow, its neck too long, and its face was wrong. Too broad in some places, too human in others. Like something halfway finished, stuck between man and animal, trying to decide which mask to put on. And the eyes. For just a second, its eyes caught the moonlight, and they didn't shine like an animal's. There was a focus there, a recognition, like it was sizing me up, like it knew exactly what I was, who I was. I must have blinked, because by the time I pulled in a breath, it was gone. Just ripples where it had been, fading into the black. I backed away from the rail and didn't go near the edge again that night. At dinner, I told the crew what I'd seen. Most of them laughed. You know the way people laugh when they're trying to keep from being creeped out? A little too loud, a little too forced. One of the younger deckhands clapped me on the shoulder and said, "You've been pulling too many shifts, man. You're seeing things." But not everybody laughed. Old Joe just stared at me. He didn't joke, didn't tease. His face went kind of tight around the eyes, like he'd heard this before and wished he hadn't. All he said was, "You hear anything else out there tonight, you come inside. Don't go to the rail if you hear crying. You hear me?" I nodded, but I didn't really get it yet. Not until the next night. They put me on night watch the following evening. Fog had settled in thick as wool. The moon was still up there somewhere, but you'd never know it. The beam from my flashlight barely went 10 feet before the fog swallowed it. You know that kind of fog, where sound doesn't travel right. It deadens everything, makes normal noises feel far away and wrong. I was doing rounds, walking the deck, when I heard it. At first, I thought it was just the wind working through the railings, whistling that weird way it sometimes does. A kind of voice-shaped sound, easy to ignore. But then I heard actual words. My own voice. Not like my voice, not close to my voice. It was my voice, echo clear, coming from out in the fog. "Hey, can you hear me? I need some help over here." I stopped dead. It was my voice, but not where it was supposed to be. You ever hear a recording of yourself and think, do I really sound like that? Imagine that, but louder and calling you from the dark. Hello? Same tone, same little upward lilt I get when I'm not sure someone's listening. "I can't get back on board. Can someone give me a hand?" I didn't answer. Every warning I'd shrugged off, every story the old guys had told me, came rushing back in one rush of cold. Instead, I lifted my flashlight and pointed it out over the side toward the sound. The beam cut through layers of fog like curtains, just a slice at a time. That's when I saw it. Something was floating in the water, just past the edge of the light. I leans over the rail to get a better look, and my stomach turned to stone. It was an otter's face, but the eyes were human. Not just human, familiar, my own eye color, the same little crease at the corner, staring straight up at me, unblinking. The mouth twitched into a shape that was almost a smile, but too wide, too many teeth. Then, in my own voice, era smooth, casual, like we were in the break room, it said, "Can you come closer?" I did the only thing my body could think to do. I screamed. The next morning, I was packing up my gear at the end of the week when the captain asked me to come to his office. He wasn't a superstitious man. Practical, quiet, the kind of guy who measured his words like they cost money. He closed the door behind me and let out this long, tired sigh. "I heard what happened," he said. "What you told the others." I started to apologize, thinking he was going to tell me to quit scaring the crew. Instead, he studied me for a moment and said, very calmly, "Take a few weeks off. Don't go near the water. Not the dock, not the shore. Just stay inland for a bit." I asked him why, half hoping he'd say it was just for my nerves, that he thought I needed rest. He just shook his head. "Sometimes they take an interest," he said. "When they do, it's better if you give them less to look at." He didn't explain who they were. He didn't have to. I stayed away. It's been 3 weeks since I set foot on that ferry. Tomorrow, I'm supposed to go back. Part of me thinks it'll be fine, that it was all stress and fog and tricks of the light. Another part of me remembers the weight of that stare from the water, the way my own voice sounded wrong coming from somewhere it shouldn't be. So, do me a favor, yeah? If you're ever near the coast in the off-season, and the boardwalk's slick with moss, and the night's so quiet you can hear otters playing out by the rocks, listen closely. If they're just chattering and splashing, you're probably fine. But if they start to sound like children crying, or worse, like you, calling out from somewhere in the dark, don't go to the rail. Don't follow the voice. And whatever you do, stay off the water when the moon rises. So, I grew up in the same house my entire childhood. Same creaky floors, same chipped paint in the hallway, same old oak tree outside my window. I even stayed in the same bedroom until I was about 16. Now, here's the thing about that room. I never really felt anything weird in there. To me, it was just my room. Posters on the wall, piles of toys, the usual chaos. But my older cousins, they hated sleeping in there. They're all at least 10, 15 years older than me. Grown, tough, nothing scares me type people. And yet, every time they slept over, they'd be like, can I crash on the couch instead? At first, I thought they were just being dramatic. But later on, I realized they all felt something in that room that I just didn't. So, one night when I was about 7, maybe 8, we're playing hide and seek in the dark. Me, my big brother, and 2 of my cousins. The rule was, no lights, just flashlights if you really freaked out. I remember sprinting through the house, laughing, totally hyped up. My dad, Marco, had this closet that connected his bedroom to the bathroom, and that bathroom opened into the hallway. It was like this little secret shortcut. So I'm running, right? I cut through my dad's closet, burst into the bathroom, and I'm about to dart into the hallway, and I just stop. Because there, standing by the bathtub, is this little girl. She looks about my age, dark hair, kind of tangled. She's wearing this pale dress that looks old, like something from a family photograph. And she's just standing there, turned slightly away from me, like she's looking down at the tub. And for some reason, in that moment, my brain just goes, oh, one of my cousin's kids or something. Like it doesn't even register as scary. I'm a kid. I'm mid-game. I just think, oh, weird, and run right past her and back into the hallway. It wasn't until later that it really hit me. About a year after that, my older brother, his name's Lucas, was talking to me. We were in the kitchen, just snacking late at night, and he goes, hey, do you remember when you were younger and you were scared of Dad's bathroom? And I'm like, I wasn't scared. Why? And he says, super casual, I saw a little girl in there once, standing by the tub. Thought maybe you did too. And I swear to you, my stomach just dropped. Because I hadn't told anyone about what I saw. Not my dad, not my cousins, nobody. And he described it almost exactly the same. The little girl, by the bathtub, just standing there. By the way, that bathroom, it was directly across the hall from my bedroom door. You stepped out of my room, and boom, you were staring right at it. Now, around this same time, my dad kept getting on my case about sneaking around at night. He'd say, Melly, you have to stop getting up in the middle of the night and going to the kitchen. You've got school in the morning. And I'd be like, Dad, I'm not. I'm literally asleep. But he was sure it was me. He said he'd hear these tiny, quick footsteps going down the hall, like a kid walking fast, light, but very distinct. The way he described it, he said it sounded like marbles or those little silica gel beads bouncing on the tile. Just this soft, scattering sound moving from my room, past his door, toward the kitchen. Sometimes he'd hear the dining room chairs scrape like someone was pulling them out from the table. The dining room was right next to my room, so any sound in there carried straight through our hallway. He'd get up, walk through the house, check on me, still in bed, out cold. Check the kitchen, lights off, everything in place. And then there was the night that really did it for me. I was 8. It was summer, so I didn't have to wake up early, and I was allowed to stay up a little later. I remember lying in bed, watching cartoons. The Fairly Odd Parents, I think. The glow from the TV was the only light in the room. Behind the head of my bed, pressed up against the wall, I had one of those home versions of an arcade basketball game. You know, the kind with a little plastic hoop and a net that leads down to a tray, and a plastic lever inside the hoop that counts the baskets. Whenever the ball went through and hit that lever, it made this super loud, sproing sound, like a metal spring snapping back. It was impossible to miss. So I'm lying there, kind of half zoned out, half watching TV. The room is quiet except for the show, and suddenly, that exact loud, springy sound goes off right behind my head. I froze, like completely froze. Slowly, I sit up and turn around, and I see the little orange basketball just rolling down from the hoop all the way to the edge of the tray, like it had just gone through. There was no one else in the room, no draft, no one bumped it. The ball had been sitting there for hours. I remember my heart just pounding. I grabbed the remote, turned the TV off, and the silence after that was somehow even worse. I glanced at my alarm clock, and it was 2:53 a.m. We always talk about 3 a.m. being the creepy time, so I was like, nope, absolutely not. I bolted out of bed and went to my dad's room. I didn't even try to play it cool. I just crawled into his bed and stayed there the rest of the night. I didn't tell him the full story until years later, but I remember every single detail from that moment. The TV show, the exact sound, the way the ball moved. It's like it's burned into my memory. After that, I started thinking about that little girl in the bathroom, the footsteps my dad kept hearing, the chair moving, and then the basketball thing. And instead of being constantly terrified, I decided to make peace with it. I started leaving toys out on purpose. Before school, I'd pick a doll or a little figurine and place it where she could reach it. On my desk, on the floor by the bed, near the basketball game. And I'd say out loud, quietly, "These are for you, okay? You can play with them while I'm gone, just don't scare Dad too much." Sometimes, when I was alone in my room, I'd just talk to her. Not like full conversations, but little comments like, "I had a bad day today," or, "Please don't make loud noises tonight, I'm really tired." I didn't even know for sure if she was there, but weirdly, it made me feel better. Less like a kid trapped in a haunted room, and more like I was sharing a space with someone who just didn't have anywhere else to go. My dad still lives in that same house. The room is a guest room now. The bathroom is still across the hall, and the dining room is still right next to it, just like before. When we all get together, me, my brother, my cousins, we still joke about the house ghost. My dad will say, "She was running around again last night," and we'll laugh. But there's always this little pause afterward where we're all thinking, yeah, but also, maybe she really was. I don't know exactly who she was or why she was there, but I grew up with this sense that I wasn't always alone in that house. And instead of that being purely frightening, over time it became almost comforting. So, I guess I'll just talk to you like we're sitting on a couch together, yeah? Since I can remember, sleep has never really felt safe to me. I've always had nightmares, like the same one over and over with slightly different angles. They weren't just bad dreams. They were about being used, being exploited in ways that made my whole body feel dirty, even after I woke up. Sometimes I was myself in the dream. Sometimes I was someone else, and I was just trapped inside her, watching everything from her eyes. There's one version I still see so clearly. In that one, I'm not me. I'm this little girl, maybe 9 or 10, wearing a yellow hoodie and worn-out blue jeans, sitting on these rough concrete steps outside a big gray stone building. The sun is beating down, and I remember feeling this deep, heavy knowing. I don't want to be here. I don't want this. But I also knew I was being forced to be there. In the dream, I'm sitting there with my knees pulled up, and I know I'm supposed to do things that feel disgusting and wrong. There's this horrible burning pit in my stomach, like my body already knows what's coming. Then I see him. I don't look at his face. I won't look at his face. But I see his clothes. He's tall and skinny, walking up the steps in these straight, dark jeans and old, beat-up boots. He stops right next to me, towering over me. I just stare at his shoes and feel my whole body go cold. He turns and walks into the building, and that burning in my stomach turns into fire, because I know I'm supposed to follow him. I know what happens if I do. In the dream, I walk toward the door, and right as I'm about to step inside, I wake up. Every time I wake up right there, and every time I want to go back. Not because I liked the dream, but because I wanted to grab that little girl and run. I wanted to save her. After a while, I started dreading sleep. I was terrified that one day I'd get stuck in that dream and not wake up, that I'd just live there forever, with no way to pull myself out. And it wasn't just that one nightmare. I had dreams about being kidnapped too. You know that feeling when you're running in a dream, but your body feels like it's sinking into the ground? You're moving in slow motion, and terror is just chewing you up from the inside? Yeah, that. I'd be running, knowing someone was chasing me, and my legs just wouldn't work. I'd wake up like, why does my brain hate me so much? Then things somehow got worse. My dad started traveling for work a lot, so my brother, my sister, and I would sleep with my mom because it made her feel better having us close. I was probably around 10 or 11. You'd think being right next to her would make me feel safe, right? But at that point, I was already scared to fall asleep. I was afraid of the dreams, afraid I'd just slip into that nightmare world and not come back. One night, I'm lying next to my mom, trying to calm down enough to sleep, and suddenly I get these flashes, like little movie clips in my head, of me hurting her. It was like something in my mind picked up an axe and went after my own mother. I remember my whole body tensing up like, what the hell was that? I turned toward her and clung to her arm because touching her made me feel like I was anchored in reality. She moved away a bit. She never liked being touched when she slept. But for me, that physical contact was like, okay, she's here, I'm here, this is real. I'm not lost in some nightmare. And the whole time I'm thinking, how do you even say this out loud? How do you tell your mom, hey, I just saw violent images of you in my own head and I'm terrified of myself, without sounding completely insane or scaring her? Around that time, weird stuff started happening in the house. Things would slide off shelves for no reason. We'd hear loud bangs, random voices. One of the creepiest things was that I'd sometimes hear a whole party going on outside my bedroom door. Music, voices, people talking like the house was full. I'd open my door like, okay, who's here? And the living room and kitchen would be completely empty. Just dead quiet. Most nights, I'd also hear this shuffling sound right above me when I was trying to sleep. Like multiple sets of feet moving around. Maybe 2 or 3 people. Right there in my room, hovering over me, watching me while I slept. At first, I was terrified. I would pull the blanket over my head and just freeze. But it kept happening, over and over, until I got, honestly, more annoyed than scared. The shuffling would get louder and louder until I couldn't sleep at all. There were nights I literally thought, can y'all just shut up so I can rest? One night, I woke up in the middle of the night and saw them. I saw this tall shadow figure at the foot of my bed, wearing a hat. Behind him were maybe 10 other shadowy shapes, all dark and human-like, spaced out around the room, just standing there, watching me. I'd also see those black shadows randomly during the day sometimes, and it got into my head. I started to believe they were trying to talk to me without words, like they were in my mind, telling me what to do. Eventually, they stopped showing up like that, but by then, the damage was kind of already done. Everyone in the house started noticing things, the noises, stuff moving. It turned into a joke like, okay, so the house is definitely haunted. My mom is a big Christian woman, and she hated when we joked about ghosts or spirits in her home. But me, my brother, and my sister, we could feel something there. When I was younger, Before all of this got so dark, I loved playing teacher. I'd line up my stuffed animals, give them tests, pretend we were at recess, and teach them stuff I'd just learned in school. My sister and I shared a bedroom all the way up until we were almost out of high school. In the beginning, she played along with my little pretend classroom, but she grew out of it way before I did. So after a while, she didn't want me doing it in our room anymore. So I started setting up my classroom in other places. The kitchen, the living room, but mostly my parents' bedroom. And that's where it really started to feel evil. I'd be there, teaching my imaginary students, just being this happy little kid, and I'd suddenly feel it, like someone was watching me from the corner of the room. The feeling would shift from just being watched to this heavy, intense hatred. It was like whatever was watching me hated that I was happy, hated that I was playing, that I still had some innocence left. Some days I couldn't stay in that room very long, because the longer I laughed or smiled, the stronger the feeling got. I remember one day standing near my dad's side of the bed and just knowing something was in the corner. I stared right at that spot, and in my mind I saw it like this dark, swirling cloud with energy pulsing through it. I could feel it staring back with this deep, burning hate. I knew, somehow, that it was a man. Not because I saw a face, but the way you can feel someone's energy and just know. My gut said, this is a man, and he wants me to suffer. After that, I stopped playing teacher. I stopped letting myself be playful in that room, because every time I tried, that feeling came back, like he wanted to crush it. And I kept thinking, what did I even do to deserve this? I'm a child. I didn't hurt you. Why are you targeting me? All of that, over time, really messed with my head. There were hospital stays, therapy sessions, all of that. I'm not going into detail here, but just know, it was bad, and it was way too much for someone that young. Another thing that happened, this one still makes my skin crawl. Analyzing. Lee sleeping on the floor for some reason. One night, I ended up half inside my parents' tiny closet, with this big pile of laundry next to me, and my feet stretched out under their bed. I'm half asleep, listening to my mom and sister walking in and out of the room, getting ready for something. And then I feel it, this long, cold, almost slimy hand wrapping around my foot and pulling. It felt like the fingers were too long, the nails too sharp. I jolted awake and screamed, "Who just grabbed my foot?" My mom and sister rushed in like, "What? What happened?" Both of them were like, "It wasn't me." And there I was, just sitting on the floor, heart pounding, trying to act like it was nothing, trying to convince myself I imagined it. But my body knew I didn't. One time, my grandma came to visit from Arizona. She walked into the house and, later that day, she pulled my mom aside, all frantic, and asked, "Why didn't you tell me you invited that man here?" My mom was confused. "What man?" she asked. "It's just us." My grandma said, "I saw a man sitting in your husband's chair. He looked angry, mean." When I heard that, it was like everything inside me went still. Because she didn't know my stories, she didn't know about the shadow in the corner, or the footsteps, or the hatred I felt. But she saw him. That was the first time I felt truly validated. Like, okay, I'm not just crazy. Something is really here. Eventually, I opened up to my mom about the nightmares. Not everything, but enough. She told me to sleep with a Bible under my pillow. So I did. And you know what? The nightmares actually stopped for a while. They didn't go away forever, but they weren't as constant. It felt like I could finally rest. When I'd walk around the house at night and feel that presence, especially near my parents' room, I'd quietly repeat scripture in my head, rejecting whatever energy I felt around me. As soon as I did that, the feeling would lift. The room would feel empty in a good way. I felt, for the first time, like I had something to fight back with. Looking back, I really believe something was tormenting me. Not just a random ghost, but something darker. Maybe a demon. Maybe something I don't have the right word for. I feel like it pushed thoughts into my mind, flashed images at me, twisted my feelings to convince me I was a monster, that I should destroy myself. But I also know this: I didn't give in. Not completely. I kept trying. I went through psych wards, therapy, all of that. And at some point, I realized that as much as other people could help, only I could decide to stay, to push back, to rebuild my own mind. Time passed. I got older. There were a lot of nights just sitting around, smoking weed, talking to myself, analyzing my own thoughts, trying to understand where all this darkness fit into who I am. I'm 24 now. I haven't felt that presence clearly in years, though sometimes, in my last apartment, I thought I caught a hint of it. A familiar heaviness in the corner of a room. I hear stories about things attaching to people and following them from place to place. I really hope that's not my situation. But I'd be lying if I said the thought doesn't cross my mind. The last big moment with him, at least that I'm aware of, was when I was about 18 or 19, still living at my parents' house. I was getting ready in the back bathroom, just doing my makeup, music playing quietly. My mom was in the front bathroom getting ready too. And then, clear as day, right next to my right ear, I hear this deep male voice say my name. Naomi. Not a whisper, not in my head, out loud. The timing was so exact, it made my blood run cold. I got out of that bathroom so fast, and, like I always did, I tried to brush it off, pretend I was fine, push it down and keep moving. But the truth is, those things leave marks. I still get flashbacks, little bursts of those old feelings, the terror, the shame, the self-hatred. Sometimes they hit me out of nowhere, and my body reacts before my mind can catch up. Panic attacks, that feeling like I'm back in that old bedroom with shadows watching me. I don't talk about this a lot. I usually only open up if someone shares something similar first, because most people, they don't really understand how strong this stuff can feel, how real. And I'm not telling you this to scare you. I'm telling you because I want you to understand something. Whatever is out there, whether you believe in spirits, demons, energy, whatever, they can mess with you, especially when you're vulnerable. But they don't get the final say. If you've ever gone through something like this, or anything that made you feel corrupted or broken or unworthy of being here, I just want you to know, I get it. You're not crazy for feeling what you feel. Be careful with the dark stuff. Be careful what you invite in, what you play with, what you open yourself up to. And be gentle with people who carry stories like mine. You might not see the whole battle, but trust me, it's real to them. And if you're listening to this, and any part of you recognizes yourself in my story, I'm really glad you're still here. Okay, so I'm 14 now, and this happened when I was like 5 or 6. I remember it way more clearly than I probably should. Back then, my family was doing pretty well. We lived in this nice 2-story house on a quiet street, Willow Lane. From the stairs and upstairs hallway, you could look straight down into the living room, like it was this open balcony. It was super late, around 3 in the morning. My dad, Mark, and my mom, Lena, were sitting on the couch, and I was on the floor in front of them watching TV. I remember being kind of half awake, just staring at the screen. Now, this first part is what my parents told me later, because I apparently zoned out. So, according to them, out of nowhere, a piece of dog food comes flying from the upstairs hallway and smacks my dad right in the back of the head. My dad turns to my mom and goes, "Why did you throw that at me?" And my mom's like, "What are you talking about? I didn't throw anything." For context, we lived in a no-pets neighborhood. No dogs, no cats. We didn't even own dog food. There was literally no reason for dog food to be in our house at all. A minute later, it happens again. Another little piece hits my dad. Then another. He starts getting annoyed, thinking my mom is playing around, but she keeps insisting she's not doing anything. They're whisper arguing, trying not to freak me out. Then suddenly, a piece hits my mom in the back of the head. She whips around and goes, "Mark, seriously, why are you throwing stuff at me?" And my dad just stares at her and says, "See, I told you it wasn't me." That's the moment I remember snapping fully awake. I looked up at them, and I could tell they were scared, not just annoyed. My mom's eyes kept going up toward the hallway. My dad kept glancing between her and the stairs like he was trying to figure out if there was some kind of trick. My mom finally gets up and says she's going to check upstairs. At that time, my Aunt Rosa and her kids, my cousins, were living with us and sleeping in the rooms up there. My mom goes up and does this thing she always did. She'd gently tickle our sides to see if we were really asleep. She checked my cousins, Jay and Alina, and they were completely out, breathing heavy, dead asleep. No one running around, no one giggling, no one hiding. She comes back down looking even more confused. They decide to just keep watching TV and try to ignore it. After that, for a little bit, nothing else happens. Then my Aunt Rosa comes home from her late shift. She's tired, and my parents start telling her about the dog food throwing ghost. She does not believe in ghosts at all. She starts rolling her eyes, telling them they're overreacting. Finally, she stands up on the couch, like actually steps up on it, and yells toward the hallway, "Come on, ghost. You're not going to do anything to me. You're a coward." My mom is like, "Rosa, stop, don't say that," trying to pull her down, but my aunt just laughs. This is where it gets really scary for me. I remember standing up from the floor. I suddenly started feeling cold, like the temperature dropped, and this heavy, scared feeling just hit my chest. I looked up toward the hallway, right where the dog food had come from before. And I swear to you, it looked like an invisible hand grabbed a whole handful of dog food and just threw it down from the hallway. She ran upstairs, grabbed all the kids, me, my cousins, just scooped us up as best she could, and we left the house that night. We went to stay with a friend for a bit. A little while after that, my parents decided we were moving out of that house for good. On moving day, I remember sitting in the car while everyone was packing. The trunk was open, people were carrying boxes, and I suddenly realized, oh no, I left my tablet in my closet. So, little brave me decides to run back into the house alone. I go inside and it's so quiet. The house felt different, empty, echoey. I run upstairs, grab my tablet from the closet, and start heading back down the big staircase. There were 13 steps. I counted them all the time as a kid. I'm walking down, holding the railing with one hand and my tablet in the other. And then I feel it. Something cold touches my shoulder. Not just cold like a breeze, but solid and cold, like a hand resting right there. It felt small, so for a second I honestly thought it was my Aunt Rosa behind me, just messing around and trying to scare me. I remember thinking, oh, it's just her. I started to turn my head to look, but when I glanced over, I saw it. A gray hand on my shoulder. Not like a normal, healthy skin color. Gray. Almost see-through, but not completely. It looked wrong. Like something that shouldn't exist. The second I really saw it, my whole body went cold. At the same time, it kind of felt like my spine was on fire, like cold and burning all mixed together. Before I could scream or do anything, the hand pushed me. I wasn't moving. I wasn't tripping. I was just standing there, and then I was falling. I fell all the way down all 13 steps. I remember hitting the bottom, everything flashing, my tablet flying out of my hand. My body hurt so bad I couldn't even cry right away. I just lay there, stunned. My Aunt Rosa ran in right then. She had just walked into the house and heard the noise. She rushed over to me, yelling, "What happened? Did you fall? Are you okay?" I couldn't really talk. I was in so much pain and I was terrified. The only thing I could do was lift my hand and point up at the stairs. She looked up. I looked up. There was nothing there. No one standing on the steps. No one at the top of the stairs. Just the empty hallway. That's when the crying finally hit me. I got up as best as I could and ran outside, straight to my mom, sobbing. I told her I fell, but I didn't know how to explain the hand. I just knew I never wanted to go back in that house again. And we didn't. We never stepped foot in that house after that day. A few weeks after we moved out, my parents were talking to someone about the place. Maybe the new owners or a neighbor, I'm not totally sure. And they found out that an older couple had died in that house. An old man and his wife, both in their late 80s, passed away there. To this day, whenever my parents meet new people or the topic of ghosts comes up, they always tell the story about the dog food ghost and the stairs. Everyone laughs at first, and then they see my face. I always stay quiet. Okay, so before I dive in, there are a few things you should probably know. This all happened maybe 10 years ago, over the span of about 4 months, starting in January. My family on my dad's side is from Laos. We're Theravada Buddhist, and there's a lot of animist belief woven into how my dad sees the world. I grew up in a small town in northern Iowa, one of those places where everybody kind of knows everybody, and I've got cousins who are close enough in age that their kids call me uncle, even though I'm technically their cousin. It's that kind of family. One chilly afternoon in late winter, my dad comes up to me in the kitchen and says he wants to give me something for good luck. He reaches into his jacket pocket, pulls out this folded white cloth, and unwraps it really slowly, like he wants to be dramatic about it. Inside is what I think at first is just a gold nugget. When he hands it to me, I see it's actually a pendant. It's shaped like a woman, short, round figure, large breasts, kind of old-looking. Not super fancy or detailed, but it feels heavy, like it means something. Dad looks at me and says, very seriously, that I need to keep it close, in my pocket or around my neck at all times. It's for protection and good luck, he tells me. So I start carrying it. I'd slip it into my pocket during the day, sometimes wear it on a thin chain at night. And for a while, life is just good. Nothing crazy, but smooth. Work, friends, family, no bad vibes. A few months later, I ship off for training. I'd enlisted in the Army National Guard as a combat engineer and got sent down to Fort Sill in Oklahoma. I couldn't bring much with me, so before I left, I wrapped the pendant back in that white cloth and left it on a little shelf in my bedroom. Training was rough but straightforward. Long days, no sleep, lots of yelling. You know the deal. I pushed through, graduated, and came back home in late October. By then, I had completely forgotten about the pendant. I was focused on settling into my new job, reconnecting with friends, and hanging out with my cousins and their kids again. Everything was fine. Until December. One night, I have this incredibly vivid dream. You know the kind that feels more like a memory than a dream? In it, I'm at one of our town's parks. It's late afternoon, the sun is out, and I can feel the warmth on my face, this light breeze on my arms. I can even smell the damp wood chips and the metal of the playground. My niece, let's call her Lily, she was about 5 at the time, is in the sand pit, totally focused on building this lopsided sandcastle. I'm sitting on a bench nearby, just watching her and feeling peaceful, really content. Then, across the park, on the other side, I notice someone. A woman sitting on a bench. I can't see her face, but I notice long black hair, very light skin, and this long white dress that kind of moves with the breeze. She's just sitting there, still. I look back at Lily. She looks up at me, gives me this big, goofy grin, and I smile back. And then the alarm on my phone drags me out of it. It's morning. Time to get ready for work. The next night, I go to sleep and have the exact same dream. Same park, same sunlight, same breeze, same sandcastle, same woman in the distance with the long black hair and white dress. Third night in a row, same dream again, except this time, the woman isn't sitting on the bench. She's standing in front of it, still far away, but now clearly turned in my direction. By the fourth night, I know what's coming before I even fall asleep. I'm almost scared to close my eyes. By the fifth night, the dream has changed completely. There's no sun. The sky is covered in dark, heavy clouds. The wind is cold and harsh, whipping around me. The park looks the same, but all the color is gone. My niece isn't there. The sandpit is empty. The swings are still. The only thing that remains is the woman. She's standing maybe 10 or 15 feet away from me. Long black hair, skin almost white, that same long white dress. This time, she's close enough that I should be able to see her face, but she's tilting her head down, like she's hiding it from me. My heart is hammering. I ask her, "Who are you?" Nothing. No answer. She slowly lifts her right arm and reaches toward me. Then, very slowly, she raises her head. And her face isn't a face. There are no eyes, no nose, no lips, no eyebrows. Just smooth, pale skin, like someone erased everything. I jolted awake with my heart pounding so hard I thought it would burst out of my chest. After that, she started showing up in my dreams randomly. Not just the park either. Sometimes I'd be in my house or walking down my own street in the dream, and I'd see her, standing at the corner, in a doorway, at the edge of my vision. Always the long black hair, always the white breast, always that faceless face. It got to me. I finally told two people, my best friend Trevor and my cousin Anna. We joked about it a lot at first. They'd say stuff like, "Bro, don't bring that bad juju to my house." And we'd laugh. But underneath the jokes, I was genuinely scared. One weekend, Trevor and I decided to go to Anna's place. I needed family time. We played cards, messed around with the kids, and I got to hold my baby nephew and spoil Lily, who absolutely eats up any attention. She loves to be treated like the princess of the house. Towards the end of the night, Lily asks me to tuck her into bed before I leave. I tell her, "Okay, go on up. I'll be there in a minute." She runs up the stairs. I stay downstairs to help pick up cards and cups. When I'm done, I turn toward the staircase. The stairway is dark, just this rectangle of shadow. And halfway up, standing completely still in that darkness, is the silhouette of a woman with long black hair and a white dress. My heart just slams against my ribs. The first thing I think is, Lily. I flick on the stairway light as fast as I can. She's gone. I sprint up the stairs, go straight to Lily's room, and throw the door open. Lily's fine, sleepy, smiling, asking me where I've been. I tuck her in, kiss her forehead, and tell her goodnight, but inside I am shaking. When I go back downstairs, I tell Anna and Trevor. I just saw her. The woman. From my dreams. She was on the stairs. We all go quiet. Up until that point, she had never appeared outside my dreams. Seeing her in the house, that crossed a line. They were freaked out. I was freaked out. We all agreed it was time for me to head home. I go out to my car, get in, start it up, buckle my seatbelt. As I'm sitting there, I suddenly feel it. A hard slap on my left shoulder. Not a tap, a slap. I freeze. Slowly, I look up at the rearview mirror. She's there, sitting in the back seat, right behind me. Long black hair falling over that white dress, and that same pale, faceless face. I spin around in the seat, but the back seat is empty. The feeling of her hand on my shoulder, though, that doesn't go away. It's like the weight of someone resting their palm right there, fingers curling slightly over my collarbone. A couple weeks later, I have another vivid dream. Except this one doesn't feel like a normal dream at all. It feels wrong, heavy, like I've actually gone somewhere else. In the dream, I wake up in my bed. Everything looks the same, but there's this pressure in my chest. Something is off. I get up and walk outside. The street is there. The houses are there. The fences, mailboxes, streetlights. Everything looks exactly like my neighborhood. But there's no sound. No birds, no wind, no cars, nothing. Just absolute silence. I start walking. My footsteps don't even make a sound. After a while, I finally hear something. This low, layered whispering, like multiple people talking quietly at once. It's coming from a small, white house that I don't recognize, but somehow it's sitting there on the corner, like it's always been part of my neighborhood. There's a light on inside. The front door is cracked open. I walk up the steps, push the door open, and see a set of stairs leading down into a basement. The whispering is louder now. It's not any language I recognize, just this constant hiss of voices. I go down the stairs. At the bottom, there's another door. My hand is shaking, but I grab the knob and open it. As I step inside and lift my head, I freeze. The room is full of people, dozens of them, all standing shoulder to shoulder, facing me. Every single one of them is wearing a smooth, white, faceless mask. No features, just blank. My heart starts racing. I stumble backward to grab the door, but it's gone. There's just wall behind me. Before I can even process that, I'm suddenly inside a cage. Iron bars. The masked figures are crowding around, reaching in through the bars, fingers brushing my shirt, my arms, my face. I press myself back against the far wall, completely panicked. Then, all at once, they stop moving. Every hand freezes mid-air. They all turn their heads slightly, like they're looking past me. The door of the cage slowly creaks open, and there she is, the woman with long black hair and the white dress. This time, she's wearing one of those blank white masks, too. She steps into the cage and, in one quick motion, slams me back against the wall with her hand around my throat. I can't breathe. I can feel her fingers digging into my neck, squeezing. I'm clawing at her wrist, but she doesn't move. Then she starts to lift her mask. Very slowly. There's this low animal growl coming from her. Deep and wrong, like it's echoing inside my head instead of in the room. Just as the mask is about to clear her face, I wake up. I sit up in bed, gasping, heart racing so fast it hurts. I stumble into the bathroom and turn on the light. When I look in the mirror, there are bruises around my neck. Not faint ones, dark, finger-shaped bruises. I twist around and see scratches all across my chest and down my back, like something with long nails dragged them while I was asleep. That's when it really hits me. This is not just in my head. I'm not just having bad dreams. Something is actually happening. From that point on, I barely sleep. When I do, it's in these short 2 to 3 hour bursts full of nightmares and that constant feeling of her hand on my left shoulder. Eventually, I almost get used to that pressure, like I'm walking around with someone just holding on to me. After a few weeks of this, I'm completely wrecked. Mentally, physically, everything. I'm exhausted, paranoid, jumpy. I start seeing her in reflections, in the corner of my eye, in the shadows of my own room. I tell him everything about the dreams, the woman, the car, the bruises. I'm shaking as I talk, and he just looks at me, frustrated, and accuses me of being on drugs. Says I must be staying up too late, partying, letting my imagination go wild. I can't even describe how defeated I felt in that moment. I was convinced I was going to die and no one would believe me. Then my cousin Anna reaches out and tells me to go see this older Lao guy she knows. She calls him Uncle Somchai, though we're not actually related. He's kind of a spiritual healer, the kind of man people in our community go to when things get weird. So I go to his place. I don't tell him the whole story. I just say, I think I'm being haunted by a spirit. I need help. He sits there for a minute, then starts asking questions. Did someone die recently? Did I go anywhere I shouldn't have gone? Did anyone give me something important that I don't carry anymore? And then it hits me. The pendant. The one my dad gave me for luck. I had left it on my shelf and never touched it again after I went to training. I tell him about it. His eyes narrow a bit and he nods. He tells me to bring it to him the next day. So the next day I go home, grab the pendant, still wrapped in that same white cloth, sitting on the dusty shelf, and bring it back to him. I put it in his hand. He unwraps it, takes one look, and his whole expression changes. His eyes go wide. He looks up at me and says, almost in a whisper, "She's on your left shoulder, a woman with long black hair and a white dress." He said it exactly like that, and I hadn't told him any of those details. Right then, I feel that cold, heavy pressure on my shoulder again, stronger than usual. He moves quickly. He lights incense, starts chanting, and lays out a bunch of Buddhist items, little statues, candles, a bowl of water, some old yellowed cloth with script written all over it. He wraps the pendant in one of those cloths, tying it with red string while he's still chanting. Then he blesses me. He sprinkles water over my head, taps my shoulder, and tells me he's giving me protection, asking the spirits and the Buddha to keep me safe. After that day, things start to change. Within a week, I stop seeing her in my dreams. I stop seeing her in the corner of my room. The constant weight on my left shoulder fades away. The house feels lighter. I finally start sleeping more than a couple of hours at a time. Uncle Somchai tells me later that he sent the pendant back to Lao, to a temple, where they essentially exorcised it, removed the spirit bound to it. He explains that the pendant had been used in black magic. The spirit of a woman had been bound to it using oil rubbed from her dead body into the gold. He tells me that when I stopped carrying it, when I left it alone and ignored it, she grew angry and possessive. She wanted to consume me. A few weeks after that, he speaks with my dad. It turns out my dad had also been seeing her. She'd been messing with him too, appearing in their house, in his dreams, causing tension in his marriage. He gave me the pendant because I was single and he honestly thought it would give me good luck, maybe help my life move forward. He had no idea what was attached to it. So in the end, that's what it was. Not just a good luck charm, but a vessel. And what it brought me wasn't luck at all. It brought me a faceless woman with long black hair and a white dress who almost took everything from me.